Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very, very warm welcome to all the participants of the ISEY 2022, our flagship event in the early childhood domain, which is arguably one of the largest of its kind in India. And I take great pride and privilege in welcoming you all to this afternoon. We have some very august panelists who've joined us. I welcome you all to the ISEY event. All the parents who've logged in, who've been associated with us for a long, long time in some cases, and some of you have just joined the Klay universe. My colleagues, not just from Klay, but the teaching community across India and the world who've joined in this session, a very, very warm welcome to all of you. This year, as we've said before, is the year where we celebrate the teacher. And I think next to the parents, or probably as much as the parents at this age group, the one individual with whom the child identifies herself would be her teacher. And the power of a teacher transcends our classrooms. They touch our lives, sometimes for our entire life on this planet. We never forget some of them. I think all of us have memories of at least one teacher who made a difference in our lives that has sustained itself through the years. And I think I'd like to take a little bit of a digression here to relate one of my own experiences. As many of my colleagues in Klay would know, I have a passion for writing. It's something I had started very early in my life, around the age of 5 or 6, where I used to fill up notebooks with stories. But society, classrooms, parents' upbringing was such that, it was considered to be a distraction from studies. So for the most part, I played the naughty one. I used to write these and keep this a secret, closet writer. And sometime in my high school years, I think I inadvertently left one of my stories in an A4 sheet paper, neatly folded in an English notebook, which I had given to my teacher for correcting, and I didn't realize the story was inside. So when she came up to the class, lo and behold, she pulled out those A4 size full-scape sheets, and I thought, okay, here it is, here it comes. She read out the story to the whole class and felicitated me. She encouraged me with words that I have not forgotten till now. Her name was Miss Hema Ramanathan. And what she started off on that day has endured till this day, which means it's over 40 years since that incident has happened, but I will never, ever forget what she did. There are many teachers who've influenced us in education, in physical education, and sports, and I brought up this example because it was outside of the classroom world. So the way they can influence us can actually go widely beyond the classroom. Now, we grow up, we move on, we take on our careers, and we pay lip service to the profession of teaching. We call it noble profession along with nursing. But when you look at the situation of how the teaching universe is, especially inside India, it is a domain which has traditionally had low wages. Skilling is a problem. And therefore, potentially many very talented young people who could turn to teaching as a profession tend to move on to other domains. But more than any of this, I think the one I'd like to emphasize upon is the perception that society has of these teachers. And I speak specifically for the early childhood industry. In the early childhood industry, which we call the preschool universe, there is a marked perception amongst many in the country that this is not as important as mainland school, right? Our children anyways have to go through 12, 13, 14 years of education, so why burden them at this age? What I think we all forget is that it is not a burden at this age. What we are trying to do is develop a love for learning itself. And therefore, preschools become so critical because it is at this age, and research has proved it, it is at this age that most children have a maximum of their development happening, whether it be cognitively, in their social skills, in their emotional skills, in their learning goals. A lot of the hardwiring actually happens in those preschool years. And who stands through it? Who are these people who hardwire these, take the best that the child is gravitating towards and make them blossom, make them flourish? It is the teachers at the preschool level who are doing that. And therefore, I think it is time to celebrate that teacher. It is time to give her the respect that has long been deserved to her, because it is from this age that you get the future Tendulkars, you get the future Einsteins, you get the future leaders of this country who are going to take this after we pass on the mantle to them. And the basic work has started right here at this age, thanks to our teachers. So this ISEY, we are trying to celebrate the teacher, not just teachers at Klay, not just teachers in preschools in India. I think we are looking at celebrating the teacher across the globe. However, as a first, we are planning to felicitate three of our esteemed colleagues who've shown some tremendous work in the arenas of teaching innovations, in the arenas of diversity and inclusion, in health and safety, which became so important, especially after the pandemic years, as was the case with innovation, because teachers across the world had to unlearn and relearn concepts and methodologies of engaging with children so that the children don't lose out during the pandemic years. And what a job they've done. It's absolutely mind-blowing what they've managed to do, and what they've managed to do to bring the children back safely to schools once they reopen this year. More on that in a bit from my colleagues, but I am going to pass on the baton to Meghna Yadav. Meghna Yadav needs no introduction to many of you, a graduate from the San Jose State University. She is considered to be an extremely important figure in the universe of early childhood education, not just in India, but everywhere. Many parents may remember speaking to her at various times. Her skills as a counselor are very widely known in this country and beyond this country. And I think with decades of experience, with the true love for early education, and a wonderful human being that she is, that she's able to relate to not only the children, but their parents, and help them with their journey of, um, you know, getting the children the best that there can be. I'm extremely privileged that it is Meghna Yadav who's leading us through this afternoon. So with that, Meghna, I would pass on the baton to you. But before I do that, I am so proud to declare ISEY 2022 open.
Thank you so much, AK. What a wonderful start to this wonderful evening. I am sure people are excited, very much like you and me, to really start this journey of learning in coming few hours. Thank you so much, AK, for highlighting the efforts that are going behind in bringing the right kind of, or rather, I should say, the very well deserved respect and recognition to teaching fraternity, more so targeted for early childhood education and development. Thanks a ton, AK. And I request everyone to stay tuned. As AK highlighted, we have great personalities joining us today, and that is something which excites us thoroughly. And the focus for this year is not only the teaching fraternity, but also to bring the right kind of quality content to this discussion. So for sure, we are entering into teaching showcase. Thanks again, Ike, for a wonderful start. And we are going on to start with what better than teachers themselves. So for this segment, I would say, my dear friends, parents, and families and teachers sitting in the audience, first of all, take a bow with full respect in my heart. I congratulate you because you sitting here talks volume about your involvement in early childhood sector. Kudos to you, hats off to you that you have taken time out of your busy schedules to attend this thought provoking and vibrant summit coming your way. We have many sections lined up, and I will keep sharing the details with you as and when we progress. But something which is very close to my heart, I should share with you. International Summit on Early Years started in 2019 with a very honest and transparent conviction that we are here to serve the teachers, parents, children in early childhood sector. With that very thought, we started it little, very much like a drop in an ocean, and gradually it's going bigger and bigger. And we all are surprised to see that ISEY will reach another milestone very soon next year, reaching into the fifth edition. But trust me, every single edition of ISEY has given us so much to learn, so much to follow, and so much to implement while we work with children and families. The very first thing that I would say that we have been working on the themes related to uniting the world or related to bringing the happiness quotient to employees. We have worked on themes like parents and the crucial role parents play. But this year, we are really talking about teaching fraternity. And the little teacher in me, somewhere inside me, is super happy, excited that we are talking about the very well deserved recognition and respect to teachers. My friends, those who are working as teachers, I must say that you have done a fabulous job of devoting your life to this beautiful cause of building the nation. There are no words to appreciate you, but please understand that there are people in this world, there are parents in this world, there are families in this world who really appreciate you from the bottom of the heart. Teaching has changed from ages. We are living in a dynamic world, and I can very well see that teachers need to innovate themselves. They have to reimagine the teaching skills. And whenever this kind of discussion comes with teachers, most of the time we end up hearing, oh, it's easier said than done. But I'm so happy and thrilled to share that there are teachers who are doing it on ground. There are teachers who are really passionate and innovative enough to bring the new skills in the classroom, to find the new ways to bring smiles to children, to have something or the other in the classroom that excite the children. And that's something beautifully showcased by many teachers at Clay. My friends, it's difficult to bring each and every teacher of Clay on this platform, but our very next segment is a very small, very humble attempt to tell the teachers across globe that your work is never went unnoticed. We are here to salute you, and this is the best way to salute, that we hear it straight from your heart. And who better than my colleague Arshleen Kalra leading this division or segment of Teacher Showcase. Arshleen needs no introduction. It is wonderful that she's sharing the platform here. I feel honored because Arshleen comes with rich experience of 2 decades of training, teaching, and learning. She has worked in various countries, and the best part about her is that she focuses on work ready skills. I think that's the best match to the 21st century. Arshleen, very warm welcome to this beautiful, vibrant international summit on early years. And I am thrilled to hear from you and teachers about the great work that they are doing on ground.
Thank you so much, Meghna. It's Thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to share this platform with you. And I must say that it's a first humble step towards appreciating and recognizing our teachers, and it's a great way to start this event today. So while I was making my notes uh, around for this event, the first question which came to my mind was, what defines clay teachers? You know, is it their ability to encourage children to learn through experiences, or is it the kind of environment they create for children, wherein a child is so happy and it's only enjoying the learning process and not focused on the outcomes? Or is it the trust they built with the parents? or is it their own zeal to learn more and more and keep them contemporary all the times? So there are so many unique attributes I can list today about our Klay teachers. And in the last 2 years, during the difficult times, I must say that our teachers have surprised us by their resilience, by their passion, by their indomitable spirit. And today
So
I'm
true.
so happy, so proud to honor this spirit, right? So today, it's such an honor on this platform to present our first ever teacher showcase to all of you, which is dedicated to honor the spirit of our teachers, their contributions in the space of early years education. It is a step towards recognizing, celebrating, and honor the kind of impact they leave on the lives of our children.
So
And for this showcase, we had chosen three categories. These categories are innovation and diversity and inclusion, health and safety. I must say that the reason we chose these three categories are because these are three very critical categories or domains intrinsic to bringing power excellence to any school.
so
And
true.
I must say it was a very difficult task, Meghna, to shortlist just best three showcases for this event. But I must thank the subject matter experts as well as the jury members who evaluated these nominations. We received almost 80 nominations across the country, and I'm hoping that from next year onwards, in the coming years, since we started this with Klay teachers, but we are hoping to open it for teachers across the globe to showcase their learnings, their stories, their experiences with us on this platform.
Oh,
So
awesome.
so great. So, like I said, because of the paucity of time, we are only looking at three showcases today. So, without a further ado, let me start with the first category, innovation.
Sure. I leave it in your hands, Arsh. Would love to hear from teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. So innovation, this category is dedicated to honor the contribution of our teachers who bring in innovative strategies to the classroom, innovative learning methodologies to the classroom, teachers who think out of the box and also are not afraid of embracing change. They are so quick to adapt to change that they are able to bring in creative ideas into the classroom wherein the child feels comfortable and safe in that environment. So the teacher shortlisted for this showcase is Pooja Nagra. Pooja is from the West team. She's based out of Mumbai, and currently she's working as a curriculum coordinator at Klay. I must say, Pooja is known for her energy, her creativity, her out of the box thinking, the creative learning aids she creates for children, for her lessons which she delivers in the classrooms are amazing, and then we hear a lot about these. So let's quickly have a glimpse of a classroom to understand the kind of creative strategies she brings to the classrooms.
So this is how the teacher can sit in the middle of the class, spreading her wraparound skirt like this, and then start narrating her story. The name of the story is The Rainbow Fish. And this is a beautiful glittery rainbow fish with her glittery skin.
Hello everyone, I'm Miloni Shah, Curriculum Lead at Klay. Pooja has been working with me for more than 3 years. It won't be fair to describe Pooja's work in just few words. She's extremely talented and creative. She brings in a lot of innovation and freshness to her work. Apart from thinking out of the box, she's also full of energy. It is a treat to watch Pooja when she's interacting with children and narrating stories to them. Be it online classes, making videos, or being physically present inside the classroom, she's always on top of her game. Kudos to you, Pooja. We are so proud of you.
Congratulations, Pooja. And
Thank you,
thank you for
thank you
joining
so
us.
much.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you
us
so
today.
much. It's
Great.
an honor to be over here. I am really thrilled. I'm happy today. Thank you.
So like Meloni mentioned in the video, it's a treat to see you delivering your classes, and we have seen you actually bringing the live, real classroom experience to an online format with the use of creative props. So we'd like to understand, and I'm sure all the teachers would want to learn from you and learn from your experience that how using these props and creating these props have been different from an online to an offline format.
So I'm really glad that I've got the opportunity to work both, in online as well as in person. So if I talk about a online platform, I realized that I had to be more focused on making interesting props to ensure that the child's attention is always, with us during the classroom. So while working on the content, I had to keep in mind about the various aspects, about the angles of the camera, the lightings, the innovative props that could engage them while they are learning. But I think all of these limitations help me to come with more creative ideas. It is rightly said that you will never know your limits unless and until you push yourself to beyond.
Yeah,
So then I started
absolutely.
thinking, integratedly, and then I had videos like I became a clown, then magician, and then an experience of underwater, the underwater video that I created to just give an experience to children how the world is under the water. So each video that I went through, made me more better and better, and yes, I enjoyed the process of it. And if I talk about in person, the offline classrooms, it's a beautiful experience that we have, that we get when we create these unique props or
Mhm,
unique teaching aids for children, so that they can touch and feel and have, they are exploring towards the content or the learning.
mhm.
This enhances children's learning and the concept more interesting. I can, this modification of online classes to make it useful for online classes, the results were quite positive, and I think I enjoyed both.
Great. And we have seen you enjoying it in your classrooms as well, Pooja. So now that we have been talking about the experience, I'd also like to understand, Pooja, what had been the impact of using these props on the child's learning?
So there were, whenever I use these different props in my classroom, or I dressed up very differently just to show something different in the classroom, I've got wonderful, results. My children are thrilled, they enjoy looking at it. They have a very gala time, and it's really motivational when I see their happy face. The different teaching aids that I bring in the classroom, they are very happy to see and, touch it, feel it. They come nearby just to explore how it is
Mhm,
working. So I really enjoy doing that. I just remember an instance, an example where I had used a prop for a video that was an umbrella, and
mhm,
I had narrated a story. And while I did this, after some days, I've got feedbacks from the parent that now my child is using this, as a pretend play, and now they are using it as for a pretend play for a dollhouse or a parachute. And I was, it was a wow moment for me. I was so happy that, something that I've did, and they are happy and they are trying to pretend it. So it was really a wow moment for me.
yeah, I can imagine it will be a wow moment for you, Pooja. And now that you've just touched upon umbrella, we know that there are various versions of umbrella prop you have created, and on public demand, we'd like to see one.
Yeah, sure. I would love to show you this. So this is what I've created right now. So
Hmm. Looks interesting.
this is this is a letter and a number umbrella that I've done. For example, I just want to show you, if for example this is a letter A.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure this is how. And then there are resemble words for it. For example, if I talk about an ant, or an aeroplane or
Mm-hmm.
apple. So similarly, I have numbers also with me. For example, if this is number 4, there are 4 fish. So there
Okay.
is a caption also. So it's used in multiple ways. For example, it's not restricted to numbers and letters only. This could be used for each age group, either it's a toddler or a K1 pre-K or a K2 child. We can touch upon a lot of content. For example, it could be literacy, numeracy, even general awareness. Each concept can be taught in a different way with using this
Mm-hmm.
umbrella, and I'm sure they're going to enjoy it. I'm still not use this one in my classroom, but yet I'm thinking that they'll all enjoy this, and I'll get again a good response from my children in the class.
Absolutely, Pooja. This is such a beautiful example of integrated learning, wherein, with one prop, one can derive so many concepts in various domains, be it language, be it math and logic, creativity, journal awareness, so many things for this age group. And I have loved it. I mean, we really liked it. I'm sure our audiences have liked it, and I'm sure children are going to love it too. So good luck with that. And Pooja, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing these strategies with us.
Thank you so much. It's a thank you for the opportunity that you all have given this. It means a lot. So thank you for everything. Thank you.
Great. So now we'll come back to the categories again. The second category for this showcase is diversity and inclusion. And this is a very critical domain when we talk about early years education, because with young children, it becomes all the more difficult to understand their diverse needs and involve them in each and every aspect of the classroom. And this category is dedicated to honor the teachers who go an extra mile to understand diverse needs of children, and try to create an unbiased, non-judgmental environment for children. They look forward to bring in some kind of activity, some kind of innovation in the classroom, wherein they are able to involve everyone. That is the idea of diversity and inclusion category for this showcase. And the teacher who is going to present this showcase is Sivasangari. Sivasangari is based out of Bangalore. She's a teacher working with one of our Klay centers in Bangalore. Siva is known for her calmness, her patience, and the way she manages the classroom dynamics. So there is a lot which we have heard about her from the parents, from the teachers, from the same center, that it is so beautiful to see that how Siva very effortlessly can manage a big group of children, large group of children with diverse needs. So let's just quickly hear it out from the center team. What do they have to say about her?
One fine day, I planted some seeds of wide varieties in a little pot on my balcony. After a few days, not all the seeds have grown as I expected. They all are different but still beautiful. Oops, how did I miss these seeds? They too could have grown beautiful as others in the pot if I have included them.
I can't put into words how proud I feel today, and the whole center is so happy that Shiv Shankari has been selected for this award. And it's actually a matter of pride for Klay to be having a teacher like her. The way she understands each and every child's need and then addresses it accordingly is what sets her apart from the others in the system. So I have watched her, the way she works, and the amount of love the children and parents have for her is something really very, very commendable. And I'm thankful to have her in the center.
Wow, Shiv Shankari, congratulations and thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Arshleen. Thanks for having me here.
So Siva, we just saw in the video how you have been engaging each and every child. And at Klay, our pedagogy is driven by a theory of multiple intelligences. I'm sure our audience would like to understand how do you implement this theory in your classrooms?
Yes, sure, sure. So every child is unique, as we all know. So I, as a teacher, cannot expect all the children in my classroom to learn in the same way. If you see, according to the concept of multiple intelligence, there are multiple ways for a child to learn a concept that is being introduced. So it is up to me. It's based on me how I prepare myself to meet the needs of the different children in my classroom. So,
Mhm.
for example, I can explain you better with the example. For example, recently we had our gender awareness concept as community helpers, wherein we had different learning centers along with the music session. So, a child who is very interested in art picked up the art center and learned the concept of community helpers through drawing and coloring them. And whereas the other child in my class who shows interest in music learned the same concept through a helper saw. So the other children in my class who shows dominance in interpersonal skill took up the role of the role play, community helper role play, and wherein they learned the same concept. So it is up to the child through which intelligence they take up the concept. For
Mhm.
example, the other example I would like to say, if there is a child who is not taking up a math concept during a language center, may take the same concept during the block center, which is absolutely fine because our primary objective of learning a concept is achieved there. So this way, as a teacher, I try to reach every child in my classroom, and that brings happiness to me.
Great. And this brings me to another critical question, Siva. How do you identify the diverse needs of children and how do you try to involve them in the classrooms?
Yes, Ashwin, as you rightly pointed out, identification is the prerequisite for everything.
Mhm.
So here I follow some strategies to identify the needs of the children. Where first of all, I'll go through their child personal record, wherein I'll get the basic information of the children. Then through my own observation, I'll find the interest of the children. And thirdly, I'll go through the development tracker to know about their learning needs. This way, these things helps me in the inclusion of the every child into the classroom. For say, there is one child in my classroom who was very active and finds very difficult to be in a part of the classroom. So what I did to help him was I started giving him more responsibilities, say a
Mhm.
calendar helper where he will help me in fixing the weather, or in the numbers, or the calendar helper wherein he will go and check the weather during the circle time. Also, I asked him to help his peers, just simple things by passing a worksheet or a workbook. In this way, eventually he felt more important and included in the class. And also, there is the other example where this boy is very fond of automobiles. And
Mhm.
to involve him into the class, I modified the worksheets and the activities where into something which has a car or a bike in it, which
Mhm.
grabbed his attention. This way, he was part of into the learning process, which he was previously not a part of. To add upon this, I also want to share this incident where a child who was very shy and very scared to talk to the peers and also to the neighbors around her, and she felt excluded. So, in order to include her, I started giving her more group activities, show and tell,
Mhm.
which demanded her interaction with her peers. This way, ultimately, these things resulted into her inclusion. Even I went to an extent where I sat next to her just to make her comfortable, and I did the activities along with her, which she felt good, and then now she is part of the class, which I am very happy for. These are the
Wow.
small
Like,
practices. Yes,
great. I
yes,
mean,
Ash.
so many practical strategies you have shared with us, and I'm sure our teachers are going to love these and try to implement in their classrooms, Siva. Uh, because of the paucity of time, I'm not going to pick up more questions, but thank you so much for sharing these insights with us, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks once again, Arshleen, for having me here.
So the third category, the last category but not the least, is health and safety. Health and safety is of a paramount importance, and especially when it comes to early years, because it is critical to provide a safe, healthy environment to a child, for their overall holistic development. And the teacher who's going to present or showcase her work in this domain is Razia Sultana. Razia is the first employee, first teacher who had joined Klay. And her personal story itself is inspirational, because she started her career at the age of 38, did her teacher training, and joined Klay as an assistant teacher. Now she is a curriculum coordinator based out of Bangalore region. And she is known for her settling in expertise. We fondly call her a woman with a magic touch, someone, and there's so many names. I mean, so many ways people call Razia. We associate Razia with tender love and care expertise. Some of the teachers call her mother, so many things. So let's just quickly look at a video to understand why she is considered, or she's called, as a settling in expert.
My strength is to settle any crying child.
Open, shut them, open, shut them, put them on your lap, lap, lap.
It's been 4 years since I have known Razia, and whenever I have to think of a name who can settle the child smoothly in Klay environment, the first name that comes to my mind is Razia. Razia not only understands the emotional well-being of a child, how important it is as they are staying away from their parent for the very first time, she also understands the parents and calm down the anxious parents who are also going through the same separation anxiety. She makes the parent understand, she talks to the parents, makes them understand that they have taken the best decision by choosing Klay for their child. You'll always see Razia having a big smile on her face, and she's the happiest when she's around the children. Keep going, Razia. All the best.
Hey, congratulations, Razia, and thank you for joining us today. And
Thank you, Arshleen, for having me here.
so we could see how children are happy around you and you are happy around them, Razia. When we talk about health and safety, the first question which comes to my mind today is during a settling in phase, from a health and safety perspective, in your experience, what are the critical things we should keep in mind? What is more critical when a child is transitioning from a home environment to a school environment?
Yeah, I've seen children who have been coming from home to school, the emotional anxiety in them. First thing is I focus more on emotional and thing. जैसे बच्चा घर में होता है, वो अपने आप में बहुत खुश होता है. जब उसको कहीं और लेके आते हो, वो एकदम से he holds everything to himself.
Yeah.
And we make the child confident that yes, we make the child and the parent confident, yes, you are in a safe place, and also we help the parent also emotionally to be calm.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I would like to ask this question, Razia. Since you're known as a settling in expert, we call you as a TLC expert. What is one tip you would like to share with all the teachers, which can help us in the settling in process at the centers? What is the strength you have, which you would like to share with us today?
Yeah, to me, settling comes naturally. And also, the main tip for me is to be calm, and allow the child to explore. You know, as I know many languages, I try to connect with the child, and also I try to talk to the parent, give some strategies to bring the child walking to the center, and also I tell the parent, talk him positively about the teacher, environment, his peers. You're going to have new friends and all. I talk to them, yeah, to be calm and to
Mhm.
be happy, with the children. I'm blessed to be with all the young children around me. Thank you, Arshleen.
Thank you. And I think staying calm is one refiner skill we all need to have as educators and teachers. And I can imagine it is very difficult to consistently maintain that skill. And thank you so much, Razia, for sharing these strategies. I'd like you to stay on the stage, and I'd like to invite all the Siva and Pooja as well on the stage today. And on this note, I'd like to thank all the teachers who have shared their exemplary work with us. All the stories, all the experiences we got from you across the country were amazing, wonderful. And this showcase is just a reflection of that wonderful work, great work happening in our classrooms. And I'll also like to thank jury members, subject matter experts who helped us in shortlisting these three showcases. And last but not the least, I'd like to thank Meghna Yadav for introducing this beautiful segment of Teacher Showcase in this prestigious ISEY event. Thank you so much, Meghna. It really helped us, and it gives us an opportunity to know the kind of work which is happening on ground. So thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for having us here.
I have no words to tell you what I felt while I was listening to these teachers. It was coming straight from the heart, and many thanks for showing us the great work that's happening on ground. Having said that, I know it's just tip of the iceberg. There is so much more going on in classrooms even right now, but for sure we will keep bringing more and more in future editions of ISEY. Thanks a
Looking
ton,
forward to that.
Arsh.
Thank you so much, Meghna. Bye.
Thanks a ton, Nash. Thanks a lot for sailing through this wonderful segment. And this is just the beginning of interesting conversations, my friend. While I was listening to teachers, one significant thing that came to my mind is that teachers have given their heart and soul to this profession. And it is high time that they empower themselves, they recognize themselves, they respect themselves. But trust me, it's not only on teachers to survive like that. The society at large play a great role in bringing the right kind of respect and recognition to teachers. And I think it's a great idea to hear from the experts in this field about how to bring everything together and how do we play our own individual roles so that the teachers get the very well deserved respect and recognition. The first in line, I'm super thrilled to invite for this panel discussion, which is about dialogues for impact, is Miss Richa Anirudh, a name that needs no introduction in the field of journalism, TV shows, touching the heart of the youth through her wonderful work on ground. And she brings the Zindagi with Richa, I think. She is the person who comes with a vivacious smile, and her vibrant personality will make this panel discussion thrilling. A very warm welcome, Richa. And thanks a ton to take time out of your festivities and your personal commitments. I think the cause motivated you to join us.
Thank you so much, Meghna. Yes, indeed, it's the cause because I love to talk about, parenting, probably, whatever is happening I see around with children. I love to talk to children a lot in my society. I keep doing that often. So yeah, since was my topic, I decided to take out my time.
Wonderful, Richa. I'm sure you will have many knowledge nuggets to share with the audience over here, given your different roles. Just for the audience consumption, let me tell you, Richa is running a wonderful show with the street children. She runs a school, and also she has been the jury member for Global Teacher Award. So much to learn from you. Let's invite your co-panelists and enter into this interesting discussion very soon, Richa. I take immense pleasure, and in fact, it is an honor to invite the teacher herself over here. I think that's the most important voice to be heard today. And I am happy that we are not restricting it to the boundary of India, but we are going beyond boundaries, going international, and have Rata Yukara joining us straight from the heart of Finland. Finland is known for the quality education, and I am thrilled to see Rata's smiling face. She comes with rich experience of teaching and training, and she is also a founder member of Ani Education, which is involved in exporting Finland education to different parts of the world. She has worked with the countries like Vietnam, China, and India. And I think she will give us the holistic view about bringing the right kind of respect and recognition to teachers. Thank you so much, Rata.
Thank you so much, Meghna, for inviting me to be one of the panelists, and greetings from Finland. I'm very excited to be here, and my heart is always with the teachers, so I'm happy to be respecting teachers here and standing for all the teachers worldwide.
Thank you so much, Rata. So we have Richa already, who will navigate us with realistic lenses about parenting and where India is heading towards. Rata can bring the international expertise as well. But I think if we want to come to a full circle, we need to invite our third best panelist. She comes with very rich experience of working on ground with corporates. She comes with a very melodious voice and very to the point conversations. Whenever she has to pose her thoughts out, she talks so politely but so strongly. I take immense pleasure in inviting Sharmishta Mitra over here. It is a pleasure to have you, Sharmishta, the Senior VP Human Resource and Chief Learning Officer at Axis Bank. I can go on and on to talk about you. You come with 25 plus years of experience, and I have heard you out on TED Talks and can't tell you how much to learn from those sessions. I sincerely look forward to hear you.
Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction, and it is wonderful to be sharing the stage here with Richa and Rita and you, Meghna. So look forward.
Thanks a ton. Thanks a ton to all three ladies present over here. I'm sure we will have our differences of opinions in some way or the other, but that's the beauty of panel discussion. We really, really need to bring the right kind of discussions around, because this is the first step to bring the change. So I'll start with you, Richa, because you come with rich experience of working on ground and you have seen the world from a parent view, from a teacher's view as well. So I think you are the best one to begin this conversation. Tell us, basis your shows on ground, basis the exposure you get while working with various people in various cities of India, that what is it that is happening in education sector in India? What is it that is actually going on when we talk about education on ground?
Meghna, first of all, I'm very happy that today I'm not invited as just a journalist. I think I would like to participate in this discussion more as a parent who's raised
Awesome.
a child. My daughter is like going to be 22 now, so some experiences of the mistakes that I made or the right things that I did, probably that is, I've collected that experience. And also as a very concerned person who's concerned about, because I strongly believe that society of tomorrow, we are the ones who are creating it. So, if a child makes a mistake, it's we who are responsible more than the child. And the third thing that I strongly believe in, when we say education, educators or education or a school cannot be isolated. That, if a child is being raised, all of us are stakeholders, parents, the extended family, probably the grandparents, the society, and of course teachers and the environment in the school, at home, everything, collectively shape a child. I very strongly believe, because you can, when you look at a child, an adult, so many times we say, oh, this person has been raised well. So what does raising well means? I think teachers and parents are equally involved. So when we see a lot of blame games, teachers say, oh, parents haven't taught their child this, or the parents say, oh, the teachers are bad. It doesn't work like that. I very strongly believe. And secondly, the first thing I really want to put across, Meghna, is ours is a country where we have for decades in our texts we've read Guru Gobind do pade kake lagu paए बलिहारी Guru आपने गोविंद दियो बताए. So the teacher has been kept above God. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Par Brahma. Tasmai Shri Guru Nama. For Rita, I will just translate this. In all these words that I'm saying, what has been taught to us over decades is that teacher is even above God, because it's the teacher who shows us the path to God or to goodness, whatever, how in whatever way you define God, but goodness. So the first teacher who teaches us about everything about life, the person is the teacher. So what I am concerned about is that somewhere this value education is, I do not. We are losing out on it. We are forgetting because there's so much of rat race, of competition. And when you see parents of a very tiny toddler worrying about ki ye bade hoke kya karega, what will my child become, what are the grades. I used to go to my daughter's school for a PTM. I used to hate going to the PTMs because, I always told her that, for me, more than your grades, what matters to me, what kind of a person you grow up to be. So, okay, that could be a different kind of parent. But I used to see a little child sandwiched between two parents and the teacher, and the conversation would go on and on for like half an hour. The child is just in class 1 or class 2. And I used to wonder, what are these parents even talking about the child, And most of the conversation that we could overhear was very critical of the child. So the teacher was also critical and the parents were also critical. So these are some concerns that I have noticed. And then I feel what has been the constructive takeaway of this parents teacher meeting for the child. He or she has just been bashed from both sides, and in this bashing only according to what on the basis of his or her academic performance, we have started losing out on so many other value education, the morals. And the first value that a child needs to be taught is respect your teacher, which over generations I've seen a huge decline. I'm sorry to say that a lot of people might disagree with me, but when I overhear as a journalist, I love to listen to conversation. Even if I'm going down the lift in my society building, I hear what the kind of conversation children and parents are having. I see this lack of respect for the teachers, which is sad, because I think that's the biggest motivation for a teacher, But when the behavior of parents is such that the child is made to believe that your teacher is just working for a salary, it's okay, you can criticize the teacher, whatever, respecting the teacher is not so important a value education, then I think we're making a huge mistake. And then sometimes I feel that, a teacher would also think, well, what am I working for? Then there's a lack of motivation for the teacher who's coming to the class every day. He or she's preparing the lessons every day. They're working hard on the child. But if they don't get that respect back, I think that's a big concern. Sorry for a long answer.
No, wonderful. That's why we are sitting here, Richa, because we really need to start the discussions in the right direction. And I think you have very rightly put that we do see a decline towards this profession. It used to be really a godly profession at one time. I'm not sure if teachers feel the same. So let's hear it from the teacher herself. Ratha, you have been working a teacher, especially in early childhood sector, as well as you have visited multiple countries and worked in various countries. Do you resonate with what Richa just highlighted, that there is an overall decline about the respect for the profession, or you think otherwise?
I definitely resonated with a lot that Richa just said about the child being under a huge pressure nowadays, and also how all the parties should work together in the best benefit of the child. So we should actually educate and raise the child together. So many very important thoughts there, Richa. From my own experience as an educator trainer, I have seen so many teachers who have beautiful encounters with children and their families, and I have seen great teachers with a big heart for this job. But I've also seen many teachers who are so unsatisfied with their working conditions, with their management, with their salary level. I can see exhausted teachers under the demands of the society, of the parents. I can feel teachers feeling inadequate, So they don't have the time and resources to do the job as well as they would like to do it. And also I have seen, unfortunately, many unmotivated teachers who are only using the teaching profession as a stepping stone for something else. And for all of this, I cannot blame the teachers, because I can see that worldwide there is a lack of respect of teacher profession, lack of the proper respect the teaching profession really needs. Do we really think that teaching job is something that anyone can do? That's what I'm wondering. I mean, if we let uneducated people do teaching, we are not only underestimating children, but we are also underestimating the huge responsibility that comes with this teaching job. So just to mention a few things that you must master when you are a teacher. You must have theoretical knowledge on early childhood development, early childhood learning. You must know brain development. You must understand personality psychology, individual learning. You must be a mentor, a motivator, a listener. You must possess great social-emotional skills, communication skills, pedagogical skills, teamwork skills.
Wow.
You must be patient, empathic, adaptable, all these things. So how can we assume that anyone could do this without proper quality teacher training? So what I'm saying here, to summarize my thoughts, I think that in order to raise and to give a good future for our next generation, we must start to show respect to teachers and to this great teaching profession.
Very well put, and I'm sure the teachers sitting in the audience must be resonating when you said that sometimes it is beyond their hands and they end up working in the similar scenarios. And this is not actually, I would say, targeted to one particular country. We see this pattern throughout the countries as well. But I seriously feel that there is more to this story, and I think Sharmishta, you can help us in understanding this. Is your rich experience in social entrepreneurship, and you have worked with teachers in early childhood sector. If I have to ask you this question, that if you can just share 3 or 4 major challenges that teaching fraternity is facing right now. I'm sure you must be resonating with Richa's outlook on that and Reta's feedback as well. But do you have more to add, and can you bring another angle to it, given your grassroots level functioning on this?
Yeah, I think Richa and Rita has sort of covered the ground exceptionally well. Maybe I would just reiterate, some of the points. Also, what I have seen. So I actually was a teacher myself when I was in college, and
Wonderful.
yeah, I was not, of course, teaching classes like that, but I would teach mathematics to, some people, and I have seen. Just a quick personal example, and maybe that's where I can reiterate the role of a teacher to start with, and then go through the experiences. Um, so I remember I used to give, tuition for maths, and two people
Uh-huh.
were like family and friends, and they came to me, so can you teach them mathematics and all of that? And it was quite unfortunate that they were family, friends, children, and most of them would be just scoring just about passing in the class, and they would come to me and then say, do something with them. But it is a matter of luck that within a year's time of me handling them, they actually ended up being either top of the class or, somewhere very, 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 very decent. One of them is now actually a chartered accountant who was then. So what was my experience as a teacher is it's a combined role. Of course, you need to bring in your expertise, but I think very importantly, love and right. And I remember I was then a friend, and I was very friendly with them. And when I would just show tough love, I remember they would literally have tears pouring down. And how could she be tough, right? But then we would get back to being friends again. So those were the deep emotions, and I think we just started off with that shloka, right, which takes us to the gurus, the teachers of the erstwhile, even ours teachers, right, who we respected so much. I thought it was a combination of stuff, right? We looked up to them as much, to get their love and care. So that is very, very important, and the world, unfortunately, has become very busy. And a teacher is also a human being like us, right? They have to manage their home, their priorities, their this thing, and tremendous pressure. So now the challenge is what I see, because we also ran, as I shared, or running rather a preschool and a global preschool in one of the metros. Or one of the challenges that I see is their personal pressure, but most importantly, the pressure by the parent community. Lot of expectations. Now that sort of gets a little bit enhanced because not all of us are investing in their development, like the points that Rita mentioned. So many areas to develop. Are we really investing in their development? I think there's pressure and then there is not much of focus on development. So those are the top two challenges, according to me. The third challenge we've talked about, the lack of recognition, and whenever we recognize our teachers, they're just so happy. They're just
That's so
extending
true.
hours. They're just so happy. The fourth point I have talked about, a little bit more respect. I mean, I remember our parents, the way they respected the teachers. The teacher told something, they would go and complain to the teacher. But today we say, "Mera bacha nahi kar raha hai theek. If my child is not doing well, it's your problem." This whole mindset demanding generation is putting a lot of pressure, I would say, on the teachers. And compensation and rewards. Some of my friends who were exceptionally bright students took up the teaching profession because for women it was sort of an easier thing to do in our generation.
Exactly.
And you see their compensation and you see ours. They're so bright. Maybe some of them brighter. Yeah. So that's a sort of big one, and it's not that the schools are not making profits, but somewhere we just are not getting to pay our teachers well. The reward and recognition, and finally, I think at the very grassroots, if you look at, which is not the problem that you would have talking, is sometimes also people not reaching school, but that's really grassroots of India, the attendance. Who do I teach?
Exactly.
So yeah, and I think if I have to just do the Sanskrit, the other one on Guru that Richa did, and it says Antakarasya Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunul Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama. So the teacher is really someone who is opening our eyes, who is, connecting us to the world of light from darkness. I feel India is going down in its happiness index because, this grassroots work that teachers are doing and all the challenges we're giving them, uh, something really needs to look at. I'm so glad that we are discussing this today.
Oh wow, just the first section of the panel. Yes, Richa, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself and then talk, Richa.
Just quickly wanted to add something in because
Sure,
a lot
sure.
of us, all of us talking about our times, how we used to be scared of our teachers, but we were very close. So very quickly, two things. I mean, I studied in a convent school. So Sister Laura, who taught us in class 8, from 88 to 90, class 9, 10th, after 32 years, she gives a, if she's in Delhi, she just gives a call to any of us and our car will go and pick her up. She stays with us. I don't know how many students of today have that kind of a connection with their teacher. I mean, she taught us 32 years back. A very important point, Meghna, here is my sister-in-law is a teacher. And these days there's a joke. There was a time when students used to be scared of teachers. Like we grew up in those times when we were scared of our teachers. Now teachers are scared of the students and their parents. So in our times, the teacher had one job to teach. If she's a maths teacher, she has to teach maths well. Nowadays, a lot of schools I see have given additional responsibilities to the teachers to, appease parents. In our times, there was no appeasement for parents. Teachers didn't have that time. But now you have made, the teachers have been made to multitask, to keep the parents happy, to submit this, to submit that, make this kind of a report, make that kind of report, which I think is again what we are saying, leading to a lot of unhappiness and frustration in them also.
That's so true. And if I have to summarize the first section, where we are trying to find the challenges and gradually we will move to post some solutions which we have experienced in our own working places. I would say I very well resonate some of the things myself working as a teacher is one thing that I used to hate is the documentation part. I do 100 things in classroom, and when I was asked to document every single thing that I do for and then document the child's progress and all, I really used to hate that. As a teacher, I'm pouring my heart over here. So if I have to summarize, we do have challenges. Some are laid within the system very clearly, and some are emotional, heart driven, I would say, because parents really need to bring respect to this profession. And then if I really have to say something over there, I was recently reading a study with around 10,000 parent and teachers combination, their partnership. And the study clearly highlights that when a parent respects the school, when a parent acknowledges the hard work go on behind teaching one simple concept of literacy or numeracy, when the parent puts respect to the teacher right in front of the child settles well, the child progresses well, the child's academic achievement is higher, and the overall persona of the child is found to be positive, and it starts from early childhood sector. So, Rata, your rich experience in early childhood sector brings me back to you. And tell me, I just started the conversation because these are some solution oriented research studies. But do we have connection in lab to land? Do we see some miracles coming up when the whole society empowers the teachers by giving them the due respect and recognition? And if you have seen some areas where some things worked, something did not, but stay honest to your answer and do share what worked exactly.
Yeah, thank you. I already mentioned my previous answer that I definitely feel like one of the best solutions is to offer quality teacher training worldwide and making it a must worldwide. We must understand the huge responsibility that this profession brings, and we need to educate our teachers well to take all of this pressure that we have just talked about. In Finland, I'm lucky to be educated as a teacher in Finland, where teacher training is university level. To become a kindergarten teacher, you must study 3 years in a university. To become a primary school teacher, you must study 5 years in university. And believe it or not, people really want to get in. And for example, when I was applying, only 7% got accepted to the program. It's very famous. Everybody wants to be, many people wants to be teachers. And I think that it is because of the respect that we have for teaching profession in our society. So I think this is really important. And because also teachers can respect their own work and their profession when they are highly educated to do that. They understand that there is so much depth in this profession. If I'm thinking about training teachers, I've been doing that quite a lot as well.
Sure.
What I always start with my students, I say that respecting teaching profession starts from us teachers. So I'm always emphasizing professional proud. We must be proud of our profession, and we must raise the intrinsic motivation for this job. Because if we are not proud of our profession, who is going to be proud of it? I've also seen that in many countries, when I'm training teachers, there is a need for a total shift in the mindset of how we think about early childhood education. For example, play-based learning, emergent curriculum, and child-centered learning seem to be quite new topics in many countries, or at least they are not really implemented in the classroom. So what I'm emphasizing when I'm training teachers is that we think about the whys for our actions. We think about why do we choose this practice over the other, or why do we want to educate our children in a certain manner? And we start from discovering the image of the child. What do we think about child and childhood in general? Because I think that when we really understand the fundamentals of early childhood education and pedagogy, and we dive deep into these topics, we can educate teachers who understand the value of their work and understand the depth of the work that they are doing. And lastly, when it comes to methods that I use, I think when we are educating our teachers, I find it very good way to ponder around the pedagogical topics together. So we are growing together. We are talking about the joys and fears and doubts about this profession together. So we must also stand together, all the teachers.
I think teachers in audience, please don't forget the knowledge nuggets coming straight from the heart of the teachers. Invest in yourself, my friends. If you want to really, really earn the respect and recognition, you need to work for it. Have a command on your profession and be proud of it. Very well said, Rata. I really can't put it in any better way. But I must say, my friends, training and development of self is one aspect that is really important in every profession, so to say. But it is more important for teaching profession. We all are like razors. If we don't sharpen our skills, we will be rusted soon. Let's not get into that zone, my friends. And I think, Rata, I'm so happy that you highlighted that sometimes the respect and recognition, you need to empower yourself and you need to also earn it. And so, buckle up, teachers. It's high time you invest in yourself. And then probably the society at large will start playing the role of support system that teacher needs. But Richa, you have been working as a teacher for especially for street children, and I would love to know more about that. Because in a couple of earlier conversations, you highlighted that Meghna, these children never miss schools, be it rains or be it sunshine, they always join. What is it that is happening, and how come their parents are trusting you to this level that they are sending their children to you? So tell me more about it. That what parents need to do when it comes to bring respect to this profession.
Thanks, Meghna, for talking about our initiative. It's called Jamghat Pathshala. We did it very local because how it emerged was just after the second wave of COVID. So initially, the domestic health and everyone was stopped from coming into our societies and flats. But when they
Sure.
opened, now you could hire help, domestic helps. I noticed a lot of women bringing minor girls' daughters to put to work. So I always used to say, no, I will not hire your child. She's a child. She needs to go to school. So why are you putting her to work? So normally the story was same, as we all know in India, so many kids, like the father died or there was too much poverty. Now the mother doesn't have money to put the child back to school. And suddenly it struck me, so many children will be joining, and coming into child labor. This will be a huge gap. Now, obviously, I can't do something very big, but I just decided, I told my team, let's just find out some children's living around, this area. And if they can just come and study, probably I'll take classes for 2 hours. Trust me, I wasn't expecting such a response. First day, I taught 7 children. We just put a temporary board, a temporary bed sheet on the street, a side, walkway. Today, some days, like, there are 125 students. So the advantage of sitting on the road, this advantage of sitting on the roads, a lot of people told me take a room on rent. But if I took a room on rent, how would the word spread? Now, what happens is security guards or the maids or the e-rickshaw drivers, whoever pass by, they just see, oh, there's some students studying here, some children, and they come to me and they say, so after COVID now, again, people from villages are coming to find occupation here in cities. So they say, we've just shifted to Delhi. We don't know which school to put to. We don't have money, etc., etc., etc. Can you teach our child? So I keep telling them, this is not a permanent thing. This is just like a 2-hour school, Meghna. So, and we're trying to improve their English, Hindi, basic math, science skills. That's
Wonderful,
all.
wonderful.
And then we are paying the fees for those children to go back to school. So we are taking them to schools. Schools are taking the test. So around 15 children I've put back to schools also. But the thing that you said about, yes. So a lot of times I feel children, now I see a contrast. I live in a society where there are very rich people around. All the kids go to the top schools of Noida. And suddenly right across the street, I'm teaching these children whose parents, probably don't have enough money to even send the child to any ordinary school. I think a lot of the problems of our kids today is the problem of plenty, and the hyper over pampering attitude of the parents. Sometimes we need to just let the kids be. In our times, it was slightly different. Even the very rich kids were not like, the parents were not so hyper or not so particular. Like, आज बच्चे ने सुबह कुछ मांग लिया तो शाम तक that demand has to be fulfilled. You know, we want to give everything to our child on a platter, which I think is not good for the child only. Too much care,
Exactly.
too much pampering. I see mothers going crazy about, you know, the child's demands and trying to fulfill everything. No, you can't fulfill everything, and you should not fulfill everything. And sometimes what happens when you try and do some noble work, a lot of people come and criticize you. So people tell me, oh, you're teaching kids in the scorching heat, you're teaching kids in the severe winter. Every time I go back to my children and I say, oh, we'll do a 1 week vacation. If it's December, it's cold. You know what those kids say? No, ma'am, you know, you can delay that timing a little bit. We'll come in the afternoon. Please don't shut the classes. Don't shut the school. So what happened? Our children would be very happy to take a vacation, you know, but those kids, because they're not getting it, they want, if it's raining, they come. I tell them, it's been raining. Why did you walk from your home to, ma'am, we want to study. So we as parents need to understand. I'm not saying obviously we can't bridge this gap, but sometimes we need to understand that for our children also, we need not fulfill every demand at the time that it's being made. You know, sometimes probably just ask the kid to wait for a while. You know, I don't relate to that if you get 90% in his exams and then you'll get a bicycle. I don't relate to that. But yeah, some other better challenges. And so, but and a lot of parents, out of guilt for not giving quality time to the child, they are compensating by giving iPads and this game and that video game. I don't know what kind of stuff is being bought for children these days. So I've noticed this huge contrast in my personal life of the privileged children and the underprivileged children. And you know, somewhere a middle path would be the perfect path to raise your child.
Very true. And I think that's very important message for the parents sitting in the audience. We discussed about what teachers need to be doing in current scenario, but what is most important is from the parents' perspective as well, that they need to understand the reality. It is very easy to pass the exam on paper, but the exam that life throws at you, let's prepare our children for that. And that's what very well put by Richa. My friends, it is high time, and it begins from the early years, like the CEO Srikanth highlighted in the very beginning, that these are crucial years. This is the time when you need to bring the personalities out of your children, make them a warrior. Trust me, life is not fair at times. Let's prepare our children for that. Thank you so much.
Sure. Because we are not, I'm not saying put stress to the child, but because we have made their lives over comfortable, then whatever stress the outer world is giving them, a lot of kids are not able to handle that. That's why we see the rise in mental health issues in children. Why is it happening? Because the children are not able to cope up with the stress. And I used to keep telling my doctor, once you grow up, every kind of stress is going to increase. You can't run away from that. That's the fact of life. Learn to deal with it. So, you know, if you give everything to your child and make their life very comfortable, I think you're doing the worst thing that's possible to your child.
That's true, Richa. I think you talked about the mental well-being, and Sharmishta is the best person I have heard her talks about well-being. She has worked extensively for that. So let's close the loop. I think this discussion is getting interesting. Sharmishta, please tell us, what can people do, be it parents or teachers, in terms of maintaining well-being, and why is it important when you talk about empowering yourself?
Yeah, it's such a difficult, it's a long subject, right? It sort of takes time.
I know.
Yeah. So, but I think why is well-being required? I think of late, one of the observation that I have, and especially after COVID, is this inner strength that people sort of had, and there is a diminishing trend in that for some strange reason, right? And I would say the first step, and even the last step for well-being, is inculcating this inner strength that we have as an individual. And they are not going to come just like that because I want to be strong. So, for example, we have to adopt certain practices. I really feel practices like yoga, practices like meditation, exercises are extremely important. They are not only important for physical well-being, but they're important for mental well-being. Very importantly, they are also important for your professional well-being. So there is a very big interconnectedness with and what does it do? Why does it take us so deep and helps us build inner strength? So what it does is, I read somewhere the other day and I so resonate with it, that whenever you feel sad or whenever you feel depressed, that's the time you have lost connect with yourself. And how do we lose connect with ourselves? Multiple ways, right? So there is social media where there could be comparisons happening because everyone puts up the best stuff there. There could be, the children. I want so much better for my children, and I gave in my life for my children. And look, they're not meeting our expectations, right? So there are multiple comparisons that we get into. How rich my social life could be. Thanks to COVID, there's a little bit of consumerism has come down, but consumerism has been another big element. So this whole externalization of existence that we did to ourselves, and what it did is it made us lose our connect with our own selves. And what it does is takes us to a lot of fear. We start losing faith in ourselves.
Yes,
We
exactly.
start doubting ourselves.
Yes,
We start
exactly.
losing our confidence in ourselves. We go through all of these, fear, then losing faith, having self-doubt, losing confidence. It's almost like a pyramid. And the moment we have lost self-confidence, we are exposed to everything around us which is not so positive.
That's so true, Sharmishta, and thank you so much for highlighting this. That my friends, teaching fraternity beat parents, we need to come together, take care of ourselves to serve our children. And what better way than to summarize this whole conversation in the point that we need to take care of ourselves, our own personality, so that we serve the children in the very best fashion, be it through a role of a teaching or be it through a role of a parent. We will keep having such dialogues in future as well. Let's take a pause here because it can go on and on. Thank you so much, Richa, Reta, and Sharmishta, for joining us this very interesting discussion. And trust me, we will have more such points to discover while conversing with you in future as well. Many thanks from the bottom of our and sincerely appreciate the great work you all three are doing on ground. Kudos to each one of you. Thanks a ton, Richa. Thanks a ton, Reta. And thanks a
Thank
ton,
you.
Sharmishta, for
Thank
your
you so
knowledge
much.
nuggets.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Srikanth, for inviting all of us.
We have so much to learn today evening, and one thing that resonated throughout the panel discussion is the crucial role that parents play in upbringing of children. And I'm sure each child is unique, each parenting style is unique, but there is some common thread which we all go through as mommies and daddies of our children. We need to hear more from the parents. And I think who better than the celebrity mom joining us next, Miss Soha Ali Khan Pataudi. I take immense pleasure in inviting Miss Soha Ali Khan to this platform. It is a great value to this discussion. And thank you so much, Soha, for taking time out of your busy schedule, given the rich experience you come up with, be it your studies from Oxford or London School of Economics, and also your rich experience of motherhood, raising a wonderful girl child. And I have read about your views about motherhood. We would love to hear straight from your heart. It's good to read, but it's better to hear directly from you. So thank you so very much for joining us, and a very warm welcome to this platform.
Thank you so much, Meghna, and thank you to the whole Klay family. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm happy to contribute my experiences so far, if they're of any help to anybody.
For sure. I think, mothers have something in common. We all say that our heart and soul walking outside of our bodies when we raise our children and when we see them growing. Nothing can beat that experience. This is probably the best gift of God to a woman. Having said that, let's go a little backwards, and I would love to know a little more about your educational experiences. Soha, you come with such a rich experience of probably studying at best of the institutes, and these organizations play a crucial role in shaping up human thoughts, human lives. You have studied at Oxford, then you moved on to study your master's from London School of Economics, and this global as well as the domestic exposure back home in your education. Do you think it played a crucial role in making you what you are today?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of people, especially when I joined the film industry, asked me, if you were going to be an actor, then why did you study so much? And it was always a question that I found very confusing, because for me, an education has never really been a means to, a job or, a success. It has been more about my personal development. And I was so fortunate. And I do understand that I come from a position of privilege. And by that, I don't mean my social background or my economic background. I mean my educational background really sets me apart and gives me confidence, gives me the skill set that I need to be in today's world, to evolve, to adapt, to communicate, to represent myself. And I understand also that this is not something that everybody has access to. Good
Exactly.
quality higher education is something that is still lacking, certainly for women, certainly in this country. And, of course, we're working towards addressing that. But in my own family as well, I remember a time when my mother's mother had to fight, to go to study an MA, because in those days, it was not really considered something worth investing in, a woman's higher education. And
Oh,
on her
wow.
birthday, her father said, you can have a Banarasi sari, which is worth 50 rupees, or you can go and do your MA studies privately, which was also 50 rupees. And she chose to do her MA. At that point, electricity was new to the outskirts of UP where she was studying. And she had to sort of like her uncle at that point said, I'm not paying for electricity for you to study. So she used to, stay up, light a candle, work hard, got her MA. And I really feel these are battles that my foremothers have fought, such that I can live my life in a truly empowered way, where I feel my education is much my right as my brothers or anybody else. And it's never been denied to me. And as I said, I really feel that, people who have studied, who have read, who have had that exposure and who've been challenged, and a particular kind of education, it shapes you and it helps you to really understand the world that you live in and adapt to the many challenges that you're going to be faced with.
So true, Soha. And in fact, I would say when I was listening to your story about this or that, this is sometimes coming to us as a common woman also. So if you take my example or the mommy sitting in the audience, I have seen teachers specifically when they come to work and they struggle because they have their own children at home also. When they
Yes.
come to classroom to take care of children of the whole world, right? And this is sometimes a struggle, Soha, in terms of maintaining the work-life balance. You have mentioned it multiple times, and self-admittedly, this is struggle is
Yes.
something to really, really cope up with. And I'm sure to each its own. The mommies out there must be finding ways to maintain this work-life balance, but especially to teachers who have, like our previous discussion highlighted, tons of pressure. They have so much to do. They have to perform, and then they have this motherhood in them also. So how do you maintain that? And if you can share something that worked for you, which probably they can resonate and find better solutions for their current situations as well.
I find honestly, we teach our children that there's no difference between men and women. But I find that when you see the social roles that we play in life, women do so much, you know. We have so many different responsibilities. Some of those are towards our children, towards our extended family. You know, we want to be good daughters, we want to be good mothers, we want to be good sisters. And we also now are in the workplace. You know, we have professions that we want, we're performing all kinds of roles. And people always say women are good multitaskers. I think we're just good at working hard. Most of the women I know are very hardworking, you know.
I want to clap for that.
Yeah, we really take on responsibility. And we say, okay. And we've watched, you know, our families and our mothers and our grandmothers do it. You know, you're cooking in the kitchen, you're looking after the household, you're looking after the children. Some of us are working. So I feel like, you know, in terms of a personal journey, I also felt that I wanted the world. I didn't think about children until I was much older. You know, I had Inaya when I was 37, which is not conventionally early. But I felt like there were so many things that I wanted to do. And because I'm not one of those multitaskers, I'm actually against the grain of, you know, people say women are multitaskers. I feel I can do one thing properly, you know, and everybody's different. And I feel like when I became a parent, I wanted to just devote 2 years of my life to learning about this new experience. You know, I took it on and I wanted to be there all the time. And now that Inaya is going to be 5, and, you know, I can see that she's independent to a certain extent. I feel like now I can take a step back and start now. I don't want to lose myself. I felt I did also lose myself in the journey of being a new mother. And now I'm sort of reintegrating into society and started work again. You know, so it is definitely a transition period when you become a parent. For many couples also, it's an adjustment period because some mothers tend to ignore their husbands, like I did when I became a mother. And that's difficult for the men who are used to being looked after.
Yep.
So everyone goes through this adjustment. And all of us, you know, who are listening, are mothers. Everyone's had their own journey. For some, it's been more difficult, you know, hormonally. Some people go through depression. Some people feel isolated. What I love is that there is this network of people that you can lean on, you know, and it's so useful. Whether it comes to medical advice, of course, you must go to a doctor. But I find when it comes to common colds and coughs, we turn more to mothers, you know, and say, how are you dealing with it? What are the remedies that you're using before we turn to medication? Anything when it comes to going back to work or starting a business, how do you deal with that anxiety with your child? I really depend on my sort of network of mothers and fathers, you know, but I really feel that there's a lot for that. So I'm very happy to be a part of discussions like this where we can, just through sharing our personal experiences and just by saying that, you know, it was difficult for me as well. You know, other people find a lot of solace in that.
So true. And sometimes it's just a casual conversation between two mommies and it clicks and they really learn from each other. And this is a wonderful phenomenon. This whole summit is an attempt in that direction, Soha, where we not only learn from the experts, but also from the real life experiences of people who work on ground, who struggle. And when we hear it from people like you, it looks like that, oh, you have the same life like us, and then it is easy.
But it is the
to cope
same.
up
It's
with
the same
challenge.
emotion. We're all the same. You know, we're all ambitious. We're all insecure. We're all, you know, trying to do our best. And, you know, lots of people ask me, what is your advice for mothers and parenting? And I really just want to congratulate people for firstly being a parent. I think it's one of the most difficult things to do. And it requires so much. And a lot of us have been through, of course, a pandemic where we've had to not only be parents, we've had to be teachers. And that is a whole different ballgame. I've done 2 years of online education with my daughter, and I have newfound respect for, you know, the teaching community. Not everybody, even though I consider myself very well educated, I don't know how good of an educator I am. Because you may know something, but to be able to impart that knowledge with patience, with compassion, is a whole different ballgame.
So true, Soha. And I always say there is something good about everything bad, and that's what the good thing about pandemic. We see this pattern in the very preliminary rounds of studies coming from the schools and from the teachers. And most of the teachers have highlighted that pandemic has helped in one way because that's when parents are seeing what all goes behind one single lesson. what all goes behind in giving one concept of phonics, one concept of numeracy to children in young age. And kudos to the teacher. And since we are talking about the solutions, I would say teachers encourage parents to get involved more and more in education of children, so that you tell them very openly what all you put in, how you put your heart, sweat, mind in the development of lessons for children, so that they start
Absolutely.
respecting you more.
And it's all everything reinforces everything. Because
Yeah.
if you're teaching your child something else at home and they're learning something else at school, then it's not going to work. Which is why parents are so involved now in schools. They need to also be on board with the philosophy of the school, so that you're not contradicting it.
Exactly. And I seriously feel so, and this is a pattern that our teachers also highlight at times. There are changes that happen in generations. The previous discussions we had was about how we were raised, and how the exposure we got in school is very different than what next generation is getting. You have seen your early years, you have seen how you studied and grew in such a well read personality. And now you are raising a beautiful daughter. Do you see this difference to you also, that generations change and how the exposure is getting to them is also changing, and that's why the roles keep changing, but a common thread about the respect and recognition should stay?
Absolutely. I think so much is always changing. And
Mhm.
I'm the third child in our family. I have an older brother, an older sister. A
Mhm.
lot of people already know that, of course. But, I was asking because I don't remember much
Mhm.
of when I was my daughter's age. But I
Mhm.
asked my mother, I said, did you send me to a play school? Were there play schools, when we were young? And she
Did
said there
she?
was this place called Saifi Mahal in Bombay. And she said, I'm pretty sure you went there. But, with the third child, people tend to forget, or you learn from the siblings more. So
True.
my first memory was going to school, I think, when I was 5.5. And the
Oh,
kind of
really?
activities that we've done, parent toddler, that this generation of parents is doing,
Uh-huh.
far more hands-on, I think,
Mhm.
parents are
Mhm.
today.
Mhm.
Also with education as with other things.
Mhm.
Um, so there's good and bad to both. I feel like sometimes we get too hands-on. And again, when it comes to sending your child to school, the school that my daughter goes to now, they actually tell me, when I say, we're missing school for a few days, can I teach her what you're teaching her? They say, no, we'll
Mhm.
we'll do it when she comes back to school, and don't worry. And I have been used to teaching her for 2 years online. So suddenly
Mhm.
I feel like I don't know what's happening, what her timetable is like, how much she's actually learning, will she be
Mhm.
focusing properly? So there's a lot of, trust, as I said. From 8 to 3, she's in school, 8
Oh,
a.m. to
wow.
3 p.m. So now
Uh-huh.
her major influence is coming from her teachers and her peers and her friends, and less so from me.
Mhm.
But I do think that those 5 years, plus the formative years, you can see, not to use, I mean, investment. You can see when you invest in your child in terms of quality time, in terms of exposure to a language or a skill, you
Mhm.
see how quickly they pick things up. This generation, especially, how
Exactly.
she speaks with me, from her vocabulary to the way she thinks, which are values that she's been taught at school as well.
Mhm.
It's like sometimes we're having very mature discussions,
Mhm.
and I don't think I was like that when I was her age. I
Oh,
think I was
really?
far more, didn't have that much exposure, certainly, and I didn't have the confidence that she has. Even at the age of 4.5, to say something, to speak to adults in a room, to carry herself, and to handle her emotions also, because that's what I think being in an early school teaches you. When you're with your peers at a young age,
Mhm.
the separation anxiety, the
Mhm.
independence, the
Mhm.
sharing, the
Mhm.
compassion, the empathy, all of that, the immunity also that you build, from a younger age. So all of those things, I can see how they've shaped her, and just so proud of her and so thankful that she's had that exposure to so many factors beyond just home.
That's so true. And in fact, we see a trend, Soha. You were at least having your siblings around. Urban India right now is moving towards where we see more of the presence of a single child, a child with
Yes,
many adults around. And that
yes.
is actually a bigger challenge to children, especially in early years, because I always say to parents, have you ever seen an adult snatching a toy from a child? But these are
Exactly.
real life lessons,
Which
and
is
that has
why
to be taught.
you're so right, because we're always indulging our children as parents, and
Yes,
we're being
exactly.
mature.
Yeah.
But I realized over 2 years as well of the lockdown that it was okay for me to not be a perfect role model, and it was okay for me to make mistakes in front of her. I've lost my temper in front of her, and I've apologized countless times to her and explained that I'm human, that just
Yes.
because I tell you to be patient doesn't mean that I will always be patient. Just because
Yes.
I tell you that it's not to be polite, there will be times when I will lose my temper, and
Yeah.
that happens to all of us. What is important is that we acknowledge that and that we apologize. So for the first 6 months of her life, I was really trying my best to be perfect, and you can't sustain that. You have to be yourself. But I think the important lesson is when they see their parents, I've apologized to her, and she has understood that I'm flawed, and so is she. But the important thing, as I said, is to work on being a better person. So she knows the theory, and she knows
Exactly.
that she will make mistakes. And what I love about schools today also is that they're safe spaces to make mistakes. It's not about perfection. It's not about getting 10 on 10. Every child is different. Every child's approach to the same task will be different. The end product will be different. And that's all right. Today's world appreciates individuality and celebrates individuality.
And there is
And
no
a
one to
huge
judge.
part of being individual is your personal mistakes and your own personal journey.
True, true. Well, I'm sure audience must be having a lot of questions for you. So I would request people sitting in audience, we are going to take couple of questions because Soha has gracefully agreed to interact with the audience. Please start posting your question. Thousands of people sitting in audience listening to you live, Soha. So please feel free. I will be more than happy to take your questions to Soha. But before we enter this round of audience Q&A, I do have another question coming your way, Soha. And since you were talking about why it is important to invest in early years through a professional setting as well, not only from the home environment, do you see the significance of teachers and finding the right kind of teachers for your child, and also the right kind of exposure for your child, and the significance of the teaching fraternity at large, be it your life or be it your child's life, especially for Inaya? I would love to hear, do you see that Inaya is learning so much while she interacts in a professional setting, and she gets the right kind of teachers to interact with?
Absolutely, absolutely, I do. I mean, even from when I was young, uh, the only reason I wanted to do history for my undergraduate, why I loved the subject, was because of Mrs. Uppal, who was my history teacher, who made the
Uh-huh.
subject so interesting for me. So I feel similarly, so much of your day at school, your approach to a particular subject is shaped by the teacher that you get. And when Inaya was assigned her two teachers, everyone said, "Oh, you're so lucky because these two teachers are the best,"
Uh-huh.
and all the kids loved them. So I was very happy, and I see how children, even from a young age, respond to authority, and teachers have authority. That has to be supplemented, of course, by your respect for the teacher. So you can't take away from that. You have to buttress, and solidify your child's respect for school, for the rules, that they all have now. They understand that there's certain things that are non-negotiable. There's certain things that are, you know, um, without using words like good or bad, but these are things that you must emulate, behaviors that you emulate. She's already got that, and I see how she responds to Miss Megha, Miss Ali, who are her teachers right now. I mean, she's in KG this year. And I have, as I said, so much respect for the teaching community, especially after the pandemic, because as you said, we were all so hands-on as mothers, as fathers, as grandparents, working with the laptop and setting up an activity, making sure that they did the activity. So you see all the effort that goes into constructing a syllabus, getting the child to individually engage with a particular activity. And so many times they've told me things about my child, which I've learned through them. I've made an assumption about my child, but in a different setting, they respond differently. And I've often said, Miss Megha, she's very shy. She may not say something. And she says, let us establish our own relationship with her. And you might be surprised. So often, because I'm a particular kind of person, that energy leads to something else in Anaya. But somebody else with a different energy will bring out something else from her, which is why I think that certainly this a formal educational setting, even from a young age. I've been taking her to parent toddler from when she was 11 months. She took her first steps in a play school.
Wow.
And then we
That's
went from there.
precious.
Yeah, so it was really, as I said, because also she's a single child, that exposure to peers, and learning from your peers is something that you cannot substitute at home.
Oh, wow, interesting, very interesting, Soha. And I'm sure the teachers sitting over there can find their solutions in these conversations, because it is not only up on a parent to respect the teachers. Teachers need to invest in themselves, and we have been saying it again and again, and also showcase and share more about the work that you do behind the curtains, which parents might not be noticing. So, talk more about it. Teachers, showcase to parents, talk to them that what your child did today in classroom. This is a wonderful way to develop rapport, and once that trust comes, like Soha says, I trust them blindly, and when
Yes.
that is built up, then the journey is very easy, not only for the parents but also for the child and the teacher as well. So
Absolutely.
that's a great learning coming from you, Soha. We have really a lineup of questions coming from audience. I'll take one by one. The very first, and something very interesting to me as well. Somebody really wants to know about how do you find time, Soha, or space for authoring your wonderful books. I have read your books, and you have done a wonderful job in writing the children's book, Ini and Bobo. So, how do you get time for that? Because you are really getting involved in multiple things, and you said you are very good at one aspect at one
Yes.
time. So, how do you manage that?
Firstly, I manage it very badly. Please have no assumptions that I'm very good at managing my time. The day just gets away from me, and suddenly, like, I feel like I can't believe we're in September. The whole year has just gone by. And it's very important to have, especially I think if you're a writer, to carve out time, because it's the kind of thing that, especially if you're not working on a tight schedule, that you can ignore. You can wait for the inspiration to come, and it may never come. So I like to write when the house is asleep. Luckily, my daughter goes to bed early. By
That's
8
important.
she's asleep, and that gives me a good 2 hours of time before I start to feel tired myself. And that is usually the time that I choose, because it's without any distractions, to do most of my writing, or reading as well, because reading is also so important when you're a writer, to constantly read. But as I said, for the first 2 years, I didn't do anything, because I just lost myself in becoming a mother, and literally, I had no other identity, to a sort of, I would say, detrimental extent. And then it took me 2 years to sort of realize that there's other things out there that I must also connect with, and you can't lose yourself, and you can't take on everything. You must delegate.
Yeah, so true. So, in fact, I was talking to one of the teachers, and she was struggling to maintain work-life balance. What pretty much what we discussed, and she said, "So I was just suggesting her, would you like to take a break from your professional life?" And she said, "No, that is my stress buster. I want to come out of home to serve other children, not only mine." And hats off to these teachers. They come with such honest devotion to this profession. In nothing can beat it. I would say this again and again throughout the summit, that teachers, you are doing a fabulous job, but take care of your own needs as well, because that's very important. Find your own
Absolutely.
identity.
Absolutely. And I really see teachers, working women, I feel that they put a lot of pressure on themselves to be, everywhere. And you can't be everywhere at the same time. So firstly, trust other people to look after your children when you're not there. Find a trusted community. They exist, whether it's your mother-in-law, whether it's your mother, whether it's a caretaker or a nanny, lean on people. Women are women's best friends, unlike what, some TV serials teach us. We are, in my life, there's so many women that I depend on, and they don't want to see me go down. They help to build me up.
So how you took words out of my mouth. I keep saying this to them. I have very good friends who are men, but nothing can beat my
Really?
network of women. with due respect to fatherhood and manhood, I still believe that women are women's best friend, no doubt about it. But we have many questions, so let me take another one before we move to the next segment. How do you manage when your daughter outdoor assignments are coming up or travel, etc.? So how do you manage this when you are not in vicinity to your daughter, or you have longer duration assignments?
It's very
Um,
hard. It is very hard.
yeah.
And luckily now Inaya is going to be 5, where at least you can communicate. And what was
Uh-huh.
very fortunate was, the last two projects that I did were, one happened in Pataudi, like we were shooting in Gurgaon, which is half an hour
Uh-huh.
outside of our country house in Pataudi. So I
Uh-huh.
took Inaya with me. I was there for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And I
Mhm.
went, we don't work 9 to 5. We work 12, 14 hours a day when you're shooting.
Oh,
So you don't see
really?
your
Wow.
child at all. Especially if they're going to school in the morning and they're going to bed. There were like 5 days at a time that I didn't see her. And one day I rushed home so that I could be there to put her to bed. And she said, I don't want to see you, because she was so angry with me. She refused to let me put her to bed. So I was crying, saying, I ran all the way to do this. And you have to just, if this is your profession, like other people also have professions where you go away, like Kunal has to go away for 3-4 weeks to shoot,
Mhm.
and we were away from him and we couldn't go because of, we were worried about COVID and the exposure, and Inaya is now in school, so we can't pick up and take her with us as,
Mhm.
we could last year. Now she's properly enrolled in school. So my next project is going to be challenging, where we will have to be flexible. Sometimes, I'll have to bring her with me when I work. Sometimes I'll have to tell her. And what I do is I don't apologize and I don't say, I'm so sorry I have to go to work. And I don't say I don't want to go to work. I always say that this is something that I love. Only something that
Awesome.
I'm truly passionate about would take me away from me, um,
That
and
message has to go out.
and she sees that, even when you're going out for dinner with your friends, tell your
Mhm.
child you're going out for dinner with your friends, not that you're going for work. Then they understand that, how the world works. They shouldn't feel that they're the center of the world, because that's not healthy as well. They're a part
Yeah.
of your life, a very
Yeah.
integral part of your life, but they're a part of your life, and your job is to make them independent and to prepare them for the world.
Awesome, very true. I think that's a very important message going out to all the mommies out there, that you have a life, you have your own identity, and you are a mother, but that's something a part of the whole picture. So do not please forget that. Thanks, Soha, for highlighting that so casually but so beautifully. Well, I will take this last question before we have to say goodbye to you, Soha. But thank you so much. What an interesting conversation. I learned a lot as a mommy myself of two. But but I think we should continue such discussions more and more. But this last question, in fact, that's the best way to end our conversation. And this question is talking about you as a parent imagining a future for your daughter, and do you facilitate any pathways for her to go over there to achieve that?
Absolutely. I mean, I firstly tell her that, she can be anything that she wants to be, to encourage her to think big. You don't want to limit their options right now. And also, she's very much in a space of discovery right now. I this is my third profession, acting. And it took me a while to understand what it is that I wanted to do. So, I feel like education also, the whole purpose is to discover and enable what is already within you.
Exactly.
So that is, what I plus her education should do, instead of forcing my opinions or expectations or assumptions on her. Like for a long time she said that I want to be a unicorn. And I said, okay, well, I mean, I don't know if you can become a unicorn, but why do you want to become a unicorn? And
Uh-huh.
she said, it's because unicorns can heal people with their magical horns. So I said, oh, that's great. So, they're doctors and they're vets and they're, different ways of healing people as a human that, you might want to think about. And we thought about that. Right now, she wants to be a shoe designer. And she's designed her own shoes for her birthday. So, I put her in touch with somebody who's a shoe designer, and together they collaborated and they made a shoe together. So simple things like actually, and that, I thought might be difficult to do at the age of 4. but they really have a vision. And instead of saying, no, let's just go and buy a pair of shoes, why not, enable them to create and execute a vision that is easily done, so wherever possible, I want her just to discover what she's, meant to do, what she's good at doing, what will give her, satisfaction and make her feel happy.
Soha, you didn't realize it or so, but you talked pure science right now. There are studies, empirical studies going on, and that probably answers this question pretty much on the same lines. That as parents, our job is to create an environment where children get exposed to multiple options, because you really don't know what is it that will click, what is it that the child wants to get invested in. So, in early years, especially 0 to 8 years, give as much exposure as possible to your child. Give them support. Technically, we call it scaffolding, only supporting when they are going little low, so that they keep continuing on that task and they take the task to the completion. And after that, it is the child's choice, and the child will give you very clear indications. This is my cup of tea, this is where I want to be. And with that wonderful thought and with a little heavy heart, we have to say goodbye to you, Soha. Thank you so very much for finding time out of your busy schedule and enrich us with your thoughts. And I sincerely hope that Clay will offer us more platforms to work closely with a personality like you, and we would love to hear more from you.
Thank you so much, Meghna. And I've really, as I said, I'm very passionate about this subject, about education for the girl child, about primary education, early years. And I've seen, as you said, I've introduced her to ballet, I've introduced her to Spanish, I've introduced her to the world of literature and books. And I can see, all those synapses sort of flaring in her brain.
Awesome.
Don't overdo it also. I'm a big believer of free play and the creativity that brings. So it has to be in balance, of course. And listen to your children. They will also tell you so many things, and you learn so much about yourself and about them, from listening to them. But thank you to Klay, and thank you, Meghna. And whenever, you're looking to have another conversation, please let me know.
Thanks to turn so up with my folded hand. I really respect you for what all you are doing in this field, and hope our paths will cross again. Thanks a ton.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
My friends, what an interesting discussion. And we started with the very thought that teachers play a crucial role in the education sector. And now we have come to this conclusion that teachers alone cannot make the difference. It is the whole society, the whole force that works for teachers to grow, to uplift themselves, to hone their skills. And parents are the most crucial link in this process. And I think where we are heading towards now, while going through these multiple conversations, is that there has to be a strong partnership between parents and teachers, if teachers need to grow or if our children need to grow. And I seriously feel that these casual conversations were hitting again and again to the science behind it. And I am really not the best person to talk about the science, because we have a wonderful personality joining us. She has devoted her whole life to this very aspect of school and family partnership, joining straight from the wee hours of US and the Ivy League University, Harvard Graduate School of Education, Dr. Karen L. Mapp. I take immense proud. You have enriched this whole summit through your presence, Dr. Mapp. I really cannot thank you enough for your gracious presence at this platform. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm assuming that you can hear me.
Very well, doctor, and we can see you as well. I know the word Harvard itself won't need any introduction, and that itself is beyond words. But I would really like to share with the audience over there that how beautifully you have worked on building the capacities of not only families but also teachers, and this dual capacity building framework that you have talked at various platforms have resulted in building this partnership to a level where teachers are not only getting empowered they are getting the due recognition and respect as well through this partnership. I really would love to know more about your work, Dr. Mapp, and I'm sure audience will be benefited as well before we enter into the presentation that you are here sharing here.
Well, you know how I got started with this work was that I actually was a college admissions counselor. When I graduated from college, I actually first went to the corporate world. So I was working for our telephone company here in the States, AT&T, and back when I worked there, it was the only phone company that existed in the States. So your audience may be able to figure out how old I am because that was quite a while ago that there was only one phone company. But I knew that that work wasn't for me. I wanted to make more of a contribution. I have a lot of educators in my family. And so I left the phone company and thought I was going to become a school counselor. But I was called by my alma mater, Trinity College in Hartford, and they asked if I knew anybody who would be interested in working with youth in college admissions. And I told them that I indeed would be interested in that position. And what that did was it afforded me the opportunity to travel around the country and also in different parts of the world to talk to students about what mattered in terms of their success. And many of them talked to me about the partnership between their parents and their schools. And so that's how I got started being very interested in this topic, because unfortunately, I found that the partnership between families and schools is not always done well. And so I had a mentor who advised that I go back and I research this topic by getting a doctorate. And once I started, I've been on that journey ever since.
Oh, wow. So I'm sure in coming few minutes, there is so much to learn. So people who are in leadership positions in early childhood sector sitting in the audience or the policy makers, I think please do take your notes because there is so much coming in another hour or so. And audience, please note that Dr. Mapp has agreed, thanks to her, that she will take up questions from the audience, and feel free to post your questions during the session. I promise we will take it at the end. We will save enough time for that. So over to you, Dr. Mapp. If you are ready to share your knowledge nuggets over here, we would love to learn. Those who are in this profession, mid-managerial positions or teachers, please take your own notes because this is a rare opportunity to learn from somebody of this stature. Her whole life is devoted to this very cause, and what a beautiful cause this is, Dr. Mapp. Take a bow. All congratulations coming your way for this noble cause that you are working for.
Thank you so much, Meghna. I really appreciate being here. It's an honor.
Same here, same here. We were thrilled to see that somebody from Harvard is joining us and sharing her research for this pertinent question, that how do you build this so that this is a win-win situation for both, not only to parents but also to teachers.
Okay, so we'll get started. Is that okay?
Please do. Yes, we can see your presentation very well. We can hear you, see you very well. Please carry on. I don't think I should take even another minute to continue our conversation because so much more is coming. So over to you, Dr. Mapp.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you so much. So I am here to talk about what I've learned over the past 25 years about the importance of the partnership between families and educators. And the title of my talk is Now More Than Ever, Family Engagement is Essential for Student and School Success. And so what I'd like to do in this session are three things. I would like to define family engagement because, you know, I imagine if we took a poll and asked everybody in the audience today what their definition was of family engagement, we would get slightly different answers. They might be similar, but they may be slightly different. So I'd like to share with you the definition that I use as my working definition for family engagement. I also want to share why family engagement is important. Again, we have a lot of research that talks about what is the impact of this partnership between home and school. And what's really great is that we now have research not just on the impact of this engagement on our students, but we also have research that talks about the impact on our families, on ourselves as educators, on our schools, and on our communities. And then I'm going to talk about something I'm calling the new normal for family engagement and the conditions for effective practice. We've all been through a lot the last couple of years with the pandemic, and I'll actually talk about the two pandemics that we faced here in the United States and how it's impacted how and the interest in engaging with families. So first, let me talk about my working definition of family engagement that I use. And this is actually a definition that I like a lot for the reasons for why it was and how it was created. This definition was co-created, and you're going to hear me use that terminology of co-created, co-decision-making today. Excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. It's very early here in Boston, and my voice doesn't have practice yet for the day. Okay, let's see how that goes. So in Connecticut a few years back, families and teachers and policymakers and students and community members sat down and wanted to develop a definition of family engagement that was co-designed and co-created so that everybody would have input. And when that happens, everybody has ownership. And so this is what they came up with, that family engagement is a full, equal, and equitable partnership among families, educators, and community partners to promote children's learning and development from birth through college and career. Full partnership. So this means that families and educators work together in fellowship, work together on problems and challenges, work together to create success for the children. And it's not that families are just involved in minimal ways, that we create a culture where everybody can work together. Equal meaning we see each other as equal partners. We have different skills. So I'm not talking about families trying to be teachers or teachers trying to take over the role of families. I'm talking about all of us respecting each of our roles and the unique contributions that we can make to the partnership. Equitable meaning that we go the extra mile to make sure that all of our families, regardless of their means, are able to participate. So this is a definition that I like because I think that it actually embraces a lot of what I'm going to talk about today that we have learned from the research about what effective partnerships actually look like. So what have we learned over the past 50 years? Because there has been half a century of research done on the impact of family engagement. So what have we learned from that? And I'm sharing with you a sneak preview today of a book that I'm publishing that should be coming out in about 30 days called Everyone Wins: The Evidence for Family School Partnerships and the Implications for Practice. And what this book that I've co-authored with several of my colleagues and friends, it talks about what we know now from the most recent research on family engagement in terms of why are these partnerships very important? So again, you're getting a little sneak preview of the book. And so these are the things that we found. The wins for students, what happens when home and school have effective partnerships. These are all of the things that we see that happens for our students when we partner with our families. And by the way, when I say families in this presentation, I mean all adult caretakers. So that includes grandma, grandpa, aunts and uncles, and also people we refer to in the research as fictive kin. And these are people who might not necessarily be related, but really are caretakers in our families. So when I say families or parent in this presentation, I mean all of the above. So when those adult caretakers are partnered with us as educators, we see students earn higher grades and test scores. They have much better attendance and they're more engaged in the classroom. They have more positive attitudes about school. They form a greater sense of self-efficacy and self-esteem. And we see higher graduation rates and college and post-secondary attendance. So all very, very, very important outcomes for our students. But we also now know that there are wins for educators when there's effective partnership, that full, equal, and equitable partnership between home and school. We find that our families themselves, and here in the United States, and a lot of my research focuses on schools that serve disenfranchised families, families in poverty. And what we sometimes find out is that our educators unintentionally have deficit mindsets about our families. And so when we're in partnership with each other, those deficit mindsets melt away and educators form a more asset-based mindset about their families. There's increased multicultural awareness and appreciation, greater success in motivating your students when you're engaged with their families. You get more support from your families. And we'll talk about how do you create that partnership so that families, regardless of their backgrounds and their means, respect what you do and that you also respect them. You find that there's in schools that have strong partnership relationships with their families, there's stronger morale and professional satisfaction. In fact, we have found that our teachers are happier at schools that have strong family engagement cultures, and they have a tendency, those schools, to be able to retain their staff. For families, when they're engaged in partnerships with you and learn from educators, they find that they have stronger relationships with their children. There's a wonderful rapport between teachers and the staff at your schools. Families start to learn from us as educators about the best ways to support their children and help their progress. They know how to advocate for their children in ways that are respectful. And then there's these deep social connections that happen, not just between the families and the educators, but also there's a nice social network that happens among the families themselves. In terms of your schools, we are starting to see from the research impact on schools. So there's a more positive school climate and culture. Your schools are able to be more responsive to community needs and concern, and your reputation about your school grows. I want to talk more about the impact on our schools as a result of engaging families. This is research from the Chicago Consortium on School Research, and they were trying to look at what makes some schools improve and others do not. What are the ingredients to the success of a school? And what they found was that there are actually 5 ingredients. So for those of you who cook or bake, you know that a lot of times when you're baking, we'll talk about a cake. We'll use a cake metaphor here. There are some main ingredients to every cake that without them, it's just not a cake, or it will not be successful. Well, what they are finding is that there are actually 5 ingredients working together, blending together, that really have an impact on whether or not your school is successful. So what are those 5 ingredients? The first is strong leadership. And we're finding that leadership in our schools is really, really, really supported by a culture where the leader is not afraid to share power with others, is not afraid to cultivate leadership in the building. Another important essential support is what we're calling professional capacity. And that's where everyone in the building wants to be there, wants to be a part of a learning community, considers themselves professionals. One of the other ingredients is that the school has a culture where it's a student-centered learning climate. And one of the positions that I held at one time was Deputy Superintendent for Family and Community Engagement here in Boston. I decided that it wasn't enough for me to just research the topic of family engagement. I wanted to deeply practice family engagement. So I headed up all the work for the 145 schools here in Boston, Massachusetts on family engagement. And I can tell you that I did walkthroughs at just about each and every one of those schools. And I could tell very quickly which schools had a student-centered learning climate versus the schools that had an adult-centered learning climate. I could tell by the way the educators talked about the students, talked about the families, if they were using deficit language versus asset language, how they talked about the students in terms of the reasons for their success or failure. So one of the important elements is that everyone in the building is always asking what's best for the kids, what's best for the children, and not just what's best for them. You also need to have a culture where there's strong professional development and strong instructional guidance. But look at what's also there. The circle equal to all the others is family and community ties, parent and community ties. What this research found out is that family and community engagement is just as important as the other 5 essential supports you see on the screen. And so I want you to ask yourself, do we see family and community engagement in our school culture as important as everything else, as instruction, as leadership, as student-centered learning climate? Because I know that for many of the schools in the United States, they are transforming into seeing how important family and community engagement actually is. The rectangle in the right-hand corner is the classroom. And that triangle represents the relationship between the student, the teacher, and the content. And you could see that all of those elements have an impact on the success of what happens in that classroom. And so to take the metaphor of the cake a little further, the authors actually talk about that arguing for the significance of one of those circles, one of those individual supports is really tempting to do. But they understood that all those supports actually work together, just like the ingredients in a cake, in a dynamic interaction. And so sometimes we think about maybe taking out an ingredient, but what these authors are saying is that would be a mistake. Just like without the eggs or the sugar or baking powder, a cake will be flat and chewy. I often say that when we think about a cake, if we forget the baking powder, what happens? It doesn't rise. If we forget or don't pay attention to the family and community engagement, our students will never rise. Our schools will never rise. In terms of wins for our communities, you can see here that overall, when we look at our data, so for example, for many of the cities here in the States, when we look at our overall data, when our schools start to embrace this partnership culture, overall, we start to see things like reduced suspensions. We see that family and young people are effectively and passionately and positively involved in site-based decisions. We expand our mental and physical health resources. We have higher rates of participation in a lot of our after-school programming, and we have increased high school graduation rates. So you see there's lots of positive outcomes when we make sure that we are intentional about creating a rich family engagement culture in our schools. So we've had a lot of great research that's shown that family engagement is important. And despite all the research, I'm still in business, right? I should be able to retire now because everybody is doing this, but that is not the case. There's been resistance, there's been reticence to doing this work. And I think some of it comes out of fear and maybe bad past experience with families. And we were getting a lot of resistance until now. What has changed? So I wrote a piece for the Carnegie Foundation of New York back in the summer of 2021. And my co-writer was one of my doctoral students, Eyal Bergman. And what we found was that the 2 pandemics, so here in the States, many of you know that we have had quite a bit of a racial reckoning here over the past few years with the murder of George Floyd and others. And that combined with the COVID-19 pandemic has really forced people to think very differently about their relationship to communities and their relationship to families. So we're really seeing a recalibration and a more of a willingness to think about how do we create effective partnerships between home and school. So this was some research and a wonderful report that was done by the Brookings Institute, my colleague Rebecca Winthrop, and she talked about how in March of 2020, the month when almost all of the world's countries shut their doors. Just imagine that for a second, that all around the globe, schools were closing. Engaging parents moved quickly to the top of the agenda. Educators and education leaders around the globe developed new and creative ways of substantially engaging parents, families in their children's learning. And I started to hear stories about what are the effects of this partnership culture that's now really emerging across the schools, across the country. And what we were starting to hear were stories from educators. And many of them said, we're realizing that these relationships between families and educators really makes a difference. And what we saw, and we are starting to do more research on, was that the schools that had already worked on developing strong relationships with families prior to the pandemic found that once we were in the pandemic, that they were able to pivot in whatever direction they needed to go a lot more easily than schools that had not developed these strong relationships with families. They found that if they had to pivot to virtual, to hybrid, and then when they returned back to in-person, those transitions were smooth. We also find that those schools that already had those strong relationships, when we're looking at the data, they did not experience the type of learning loss that other schools have experienced as a result of the pandemic. We've also discovered, a lot of educators discovered, that families knew more about teaching and learning than they thought, because after all, no education really happened during the pandemic without the partnership of families. And once educators and families were actually talking to each other, they found out, we really have, for example, mutual respect. We also have a mutual focus on making sure that these children do well. So how can we work together? And then we also found out that a lot of our educators have never received training on how to develop and sustain these strong relationships with families. And many times when I do keynotes, what I do is I ask the audience, especially an audience of educators, how many of you had a full course on partnering with families when you were doing your pre-service education program to become a teacher, to become an educator? And usually I get very few people raising their hands. We're trying to correct that here at Harvard University. I have a full course, a full 13-week course on family and community engagement. And so here are some of the quotes that we are starting to hear from educators, and from educators at all levels. So both our superintendents, our district leaders, right down to our teachers. So this is a quote from one of our district superintendents, one of our CEOs, Dr. Sonja Santelices, who is also a Harvard graduate. And she talks about we have a choice as a result of the crisis. And she used this terminology, new normal. We can create a new normal that's better than the old, engaging our families, our parents as the partners that they are. Or we can wait for parents to lose whatever faith in us remains. They can't unsee what they witnessed so vividly in their living rooms, their kitchens, when we were virtual. They can't unsee, and some of them saw some things that perhaps weren't all that good about what was happening with teaching and learning. Now we go down to the principal level. And this is a principal here in Massachusetts. Her name is Nikki Barnes. And she says, also, she uses that term new normal. She says, this past year, our families have become more than partners in our schools. They have become, and here's that language, co-authors of our educational journey. This is the new normal for our schools, and I am sure for so many others around the country. And then we heard from teachers. So this is a teacher, Christina Armas, who is a teacher in the New York City public schools. And she says, she's really learned a lot from this whole partnership that happened during the pandemic. And she says, it's been a real lesson for me. We talk about meeting students where they are, but she says we don't talk enough about really meeting families where they are, one of the students' biggest assets. And so she says, I hope we can find ways to allow families to showcase their best practices from home so teachers can learn what the learning process looks like in a different context and plan accordingly. And she talks about this is especially important for the children in her classroom who may have disabilities, learning from families. What are some of the techniques and strategies that you may use that I can incorporate and integrate into my own practice? So during the pandemic, I actually sat down and thought very deeply about, maybe I should be verbalizing and articulating some different language about the importance of this partnership. So I actually started to think a lot about how was I expressing what this partnership should look like based on what I've learned over my 20 years of research. So what kind of practice do we need to embrace to try to really cultivate and sustain those full, equal, and equitable partnerships that were described in that definition of family engagement? And so in the article that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's called Embracing a New Normal. So we took on this new normal language. I tried to talk about, in real strong terms, what does our practice of family engagement have to look like to be effective? And the terms that I came up with were liberatory. Our practice has to be liberatory. It has to be solidarity driven, and it has to be equity focused. So what do I mean by liberatory? This is where we have a practice of family engagement that is free of dominance, free of hierarchy. And this dominance can go both ways. I'm sure some of us may have experienced relationships with families where families feel like they're the dominant party and that perhaps we as educators feel less than. We also have that relationship the other way around where families sometimes feel less than. And they feel that we are dominant and they get intimidated by us because of our backgrounds and our education level. I'm saying that we need to try to create a climate and culture where there's no dominance, where we're free of dominance, where we see each other and respect each other as equal partners and see each other as having gifts and skills that taken together really help to support our students in our schools. Solidarity driven, that we are really intentional about making sure that we are working in union and in fellowship, not an us-them situation, but we really see the value of this partnership. And then finally, that our practice is equity focused. It's fair and just, that we make sure that we are listening to our families, we create conditions so that they are willing to listen to us. And if we have to go the extra mile, because after all, we are the institution, that we try to make sure that all of our families can be equally engaged. And so Meghna mentioned the dual capacity framework for family school partnerships. And this was a tool that I developed first in 2013 in a partnership with the US Department of Education. I was a consultant to the US Department of Education under President Obama and Arne Duncan. And what Arne Duncan asked me to do was to try to create a guide or some tools for educators so they could see, what does my practice really need to look like to cultivate partnerships that are going to be full and equal and equitable. And so I put together the first version of the dual capacity framework for family and school partnerships, what we call version 1, back in 2013. And then from 2013 on, I started to listen to educators around the globe because the dual capacity framework has barely been adopted by school systems all over the world. And I started to ask them questions. Does this framework work for you? What would you change if you could? And over 5 years, I collected data. I actually then did a huge survey at our National Family and Community Engagement conference that we have here every June. And I asked people to give me feedback on the old framework. Based on what I learned from that survey and also all of the data that I collected, I designed a new framework in 2019 that was based more on a logic model. It has a horizontal orientation, starting from the challenges on the left and going obviously to the outcomes that we want. And I published this in 2019. And then of course we had the pandemic hit in 2020. So people asked me, they said, Dr. Mapp, are you going to change the framework again? Because now we have this pandemic. How are you going to meet the moment of the pandemic? You know, and I thought for a moment and I said, actually, it's the other way around. The moment has finally met the framework. Because as I said to you, people have been resistant to thinking about the importance of family engagement. And the pandemic, and again, the pandemic, and I dare say the two pandemics here in the States, really served as a forcing function that parents and others and teachers started to say, we really need to work together. So people were finally ready to embrace what I had put in the framework. So that's why I'm saying the moment is finally meeting the dual capacity framework for family school partnerships. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the framework. I obviously will not have time to go through the entire framework, but I want to double click on some things that I think are important and that you can take back. And there's a website, www.dualcapacity.org, that you can go to for more in-depth information about the dual capacity framework. But like most logic models, the left-hand side defines the challenge that we're facing. And so what I did was I just talked very briefly about what's the challenge that's standing in the way from educators being able to participate in full partnership with families. And because this is a dual capacity framework, I also talked about what are the challenges that stand in the way of our families participating. So you can see for our educators, as I mentioned to you, many times they haven't received training, they haven't been exposed to good, strong, effective practices in family engagement. And because of that, what happens is that they may not see or may not have learned that partnerships are essential, as we talked about from the research in Chicago, and unfortunately may have developed deficit mindsets about families. Oh, those families are disrespectful. Oh, those families don't care about their children's education. So these are the mindsets that sometimes happen, particularly if you've tried things and they haven't worked. And so these are some of the barriers that stand in the way on the side of the educators. On the side of the families, many of them have not seen great effective forms of family engagement either. And so they've developed sort of this insecurity or sometimes even suspicion about what we as educators might be up to because these partnerships have not been formed. They may themselves have had negative past experiences with schools. And so they bring those negative past experiences with them. One of my colleagues and friends, Dr. Sarah Lawrence Sightfoot, has a book out called The Essential Conversation. And it's about the relationship between families and schools. And she says that sometimes we all bring our baggage into this relationship between families and educators. And she talks about ghosts, the ghosts in the classroom that sometimes come from the past and invade our relationships or the ability for us to develop relationships between home and school. And some of our families may not feel invited to be engaged. They haven't been invited to be co-creators with us, and they may overall feel unvalued and disrespected. So what can we do about this? So in the next column, I have listed out what I call the essential conditions. So these are the conditions that we have to absorb into our practice, and then also the conditions that need to be in our organization. So for the policymakers and the school leaders here, the organizational conditions are what we need to intentionally create so that our educators can actually practice the process conditions that I'm about to describe. So what are the process conditions that we need to have in place? These are the 6 conditions that if we incorporate them into our practice, that our practice becomes liberatory, solidarity-driven, and equity-focused. And the first condition is that we have to really intentionally form relationships of trust with our families. A lot of the schools that I work with all over the world skip this step. They start to develop wonderful programs with families and wonderful initiatives, but they haven't made it an initiative to form relationships of trust with families. And we call the kinds of trust that we want to form with our families relational trust. This is also out of the research coming out of Chicago by Tony Breich and Barbara Schneider. And what they did was they discovered that trust is the main ingredient for any positive and successful change we want to see in our schools. And they define 4 elements of trust: respect, competence, integrity, and personal regard. And what they say is that our school leaders and schools that really focus on developing this culture of relational trust find that their students and their schools are successful. And in fact, my student that I mentioned to you, Eyal Bergman, he actually was the head of family and community engagement in Cajon Valley in California. And he developed a little truth test for himself, questions that he would ask himself when he was working with families to say, you know, what am I really focusing on intentionally developing relational trust with my families? And so he would ask himself these questions. The first question he would ask is, you know, am I seeking input and really listening to all of my families without bias to what they have to say? Because I think we all know that one of the ways that we feel respected is when we feel listened to and heard and seen. And so he would ask himself that question when he was working with families. Am I really listening to them with care? Not just listening to them out of some sort of obligation, but listening to them with care. In terms of competence, he would ask, am I demonstrating to families that I'm competent in my role as an educator, but also that I see them as a competent caretaker or caregiver to their children? Integrity. Do I keep my word? Now, I know that I will admit to you, when I was deputy superintendent for family and community engagement in Boston, and I had some of those angry parents come to me, or parents who were upset about something, you know, you're tempted to just tell them anything to calm them down, or to tell them anything to have them stop. That's a mistake. You have to be honest about what you can and cannot do. And oftentimes I would say, you know, I'm not so sure that I can accomplish that without us working in partnership. I need us to work together on this challenge, because if I just try to go away and do it myself, it's not going to work. I'm not going to have your feedback and your knowledge. So I understand that you're upset, but let's try to talk about how can we together solve this problem. So do I keep my word? Do I not just say, well, I'll take care of that, and then I know that I can't, and that makes matters worse, and you're not cultivating relationships of trust? And then finally, do I show families that I value them as people versus objects? You know, here in the States, I'm sure you've heard a lot of our political rhetoric over the past 6 years, where certain families are pegged and there are stereotypes about them in the news. Well, what we try to do is to not go by those stereotypes, but really see a person and treat them as a person and not an object. And my students read Paulo Freire here in my class, and he talks a lot about seeing people as people and valuing them and valuing their knowledge and valuing who they are. So all 4 of these ingredients, respect, competence, integrity, and personal regard, Go into building this relational trust. And you see that that's the first bullet in the process conditions. And the process conditions are things that each and every one of you can incorporate into your practice. The second process condition is linked to learning and development. One of the pieces of feedback that I get from families when I do my research is that they really would like to know more about the goals. What are the goals? What are the standards? What is it that my child should know and be able to do by the end of this grade? Because when our families understand our goals, particularly our school goals, they can say, okay, what can I do to help my child, but maybe even the school reach those goals? So we shouldn't be afraid to share our school goals, our classroom goals with our families. A lot of times the family engagement that is done is just out of, just people do it out of a performance indicator. It's not really to engage families in the conversation about schooling. It's done out of compliance. And our families are kept out of the conversations about where their children should be at different stages. We want to take on an asset-based lens, as I've already talked about, where we see our families as assets and having what Louis Small, one of our researchers here, talks about funds of knowledge. That our practice is culturally responsive and respectful to our families, that we embrace all cultures, that it's collaborative. We see, again, our families as equal partners, and that our practice is interactive. One of the things I normally try to do in even my virtual presentations is do some sort of interactive exercises. I know that that's a little difficult for us to do today because this audience is so large, but having your practice be interactive where your families and your educators get a chance to do things together, work on problems together, fun problems and fun projects together is very important. The organizational conditions are what have to be in place for those process conditions to thrive. And so we as leaders have to set the table for this type of practice. And the way that we do that is we see family engagement as a systemic practice. So for example, a lot of times when I work with schools and with state departments of education, I'll notice that in their goals, they will have things like increased graduation rates, making sure all the children are reading at grade level, increased post-secondary participation. And then in the goals, they have family and community engagement. And I tell them, community engagement is not a goal, it's a strategy. So I tell them to take the family and community engagement and put it under their strategic initiatives, because family and community engagement will help them reach the goals of higher graduation rates, children reading on grade level. Because when it's in the goals, half the time what happens is that it drops off in terms of a priority. So you need to see family and community engagement as a systemic strategy that's embraced across the organization, that it's integrated and embedded in all your strategies. So if you have an IT strategy, where does the family and community engagement fit in? So in your human resources strategy. So here in the States, a lot of our school districts around the country are starting to incorporate family and community engagement priorities into their hiring. So when they interview educators and interview teachers, they ask, tell us about your experience with engaging families, because now they see that as an important aspect of professional proficiency. And then finally, you want to make sure that the engagement is sustained with resources and infrastructure. So we are seeing many of our school districts here actually have a department of family and community engagement that works with all the other departments to make sure that family and community engagement is integrated into all that they do. So what happens when you start to intentionally integrate both the process and the organizational conditions in your work? We start to see outcomes first with the adults. So we start to see that families and educators develop certain capacities. So that's why this is called the dual capacity building framework. A lot of times people say, well, we use the term capacity building, but what does it actually mean? And my colleague here at Harvard, Monica Higgins, has helped to define, what do we mean by capacity building? What capacities are being built when we start to deploy effective partnership strategies? First thing that happens is that we increase our capabilities, our skills, and our knowledge about how to actually deploy and execute good, strong family engagement. We also start to see another capacity develop, and that is that our social networks begin to increase. So better and stronger and effective and respectful connections between and among families and educators. I mentioned before, our cognition, we start to shift our beliefs in one another. We start to see each other as valuable partners. And then finally, our confidence increases. We're confident in our ability to be able to build these partnerships between home and school. When that happens, we tried in the framework to graphically represent a partnership. So it's a puzzle piece that now is fitting together between home and school. So our educators now really know how to connect with families. They engage with families as co-creators. Our families see themselves engaging in diverse roles because, again, not every family can engage the same way depending on their circumstances, but they see themselves as co-creators with us as educators. They're monitors. They know how to effectively monitor their children's schooling. And so when we start working together in partnership in that way, then what we end up with is partnerships that actually support student and school success, school and student improvement. And so this is a brief explanation of the framework. I know you probably have many questions. What I want to encourage you to do, though, is really think about how can you shift the conditions from where you are, from your sphere of influence. A lot of times when I work with educators, they say, oh, Dr. Mapp, this all seems like a lot. How can we really do this work well? What I want you to think about is from your sphere of influence, how might you be able to shift your practice even a little? Because as we all know, one circle ripples out. So don't be discouraged. Start small with this work. And so here are some additional supports and resources. Meghna, I'm going to share, I offer to share these slides with everyone in your community. And so these are some things that are happening here in the States. We do have a lot of international participation in some of our conferences. So particularly the annual IEL conference that happens in June of next year. And then I actually have a professional development institute that I do here at Harvard. So I will stop there. I'm at my time.
Perfect. Oh, Dr. Mapp, it is a rare thing for me to be short of words, but I am today. Your whole life devoted in this work and how systematic approach can give results to build the family school partnership is what you have shown through your tremendous amount of work. Kudos to you. I'm feeling it from the bottom of my heart. When people invest their life and energy in this is the outcome. This dual capacity framework is something that has to be taken to every country, as well as something that I think every educator and in fact every parent need to be aware of. We will have many such conversations around it in future because you have given that spark to us, and I am so honored to be associated with the preschool like Klay for the very philosophy with which it works is to bring these two entities together, teachers and parents. And that's why we have many questions coming your way. So without a delay, I would say let's take them up because people are waiting to get their answers. So the first one in the row that is coming. Uh, this is a very interesting question, Doctor. In fact, I was about to ask the same. Is about in India, we are going through a transition where the urban India, especially, is shrinking in family sizes. We literally had this concept where the whole village gets involved in raising the child, but unfortunately, this concept is reducing. We rarely see that now, and then both the parents are working, and because of this struggle of professional commitments versus personal commitments, parents are struggling to get enough time. uh, how schools or parents can still work together when parents are really really struggling for time and the family size is shrinking?
Well, we have had that same phenomenon here in the United States. But what we're finding is that one of the things that happened out of the pandemic was that we learned that we can use lots of different techniques to engage our families. And one of the things that we are learning is that social media is really fabulous when it comes to trying to squeeze in some time to meet with our families. We have found that schools that are using things like the Zoom and Facebook Live are getting higher rates of participation. When you have a 30-minute conference where families can join you on Zoom, where you can explain some of the goals of the school, you can give families little exercises that they can do with their children, even having parent-teacher conferences over Zoom. We found an uptick in participation because for our busy families, that's what we've been able to do. The other thing is that a lot of times our families are members of organizations. And this is what I mean by sometimes we are too dependent on families coming to the schools. And so what we're doing is we're doing things in the community. So when there's other events, really integrating some family engagement activities in those events. Having big, we've been having things like big music events where the teachers and educators work with the presenters on integrating family engagement into those events where they know a lot of families are going to be present. So people have gotten very creative. But what we have to do is we have to think about what are some of the other venues and what are some of the other ways that we can engage busy parents. The other thing is to ask them. This is that co-creation piece, is to say, you know, what would work best? If we're trying to have a workshop or a meeting, what would be the best time to do that? So that communication with families to help to design when some of these activities can take place is really key.
Awesome. I think that's a wonderful takeaway because this is what we struggle at times as well, that parents are not participating in very many school engagements or events, and a wonderful idea is to ask them what will work best for you. This is a wonderful takeaway for me, in fact. But moving on to the next question, Dr. Mapp, something that I think is actually the ground reality. Uh, Most of the time family engagement is coming parallel to parent communication in most of the schools, and this is like a one way process where school communicates about what all we do, and it ends over there. How do you create an atmosphere, or how do you make this a together project, like you mentioned, where uh, both the entities are sharing equal responsibilities?
Well, what I talked about, this is where I find a lot of times we skip over the people part of this relationship. And we start out with the business. So the first thing we do when we meet families is we start telling them the rules and, you know, explaining all the policies and procedures. And we haven't taken a moment to first say, how are you? Tell us about yourself. I'm going to tell you about myself. This is why I got into teaching. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching. Tell me about, your children. What are your hopes and dreams for your children? Starting out with the relationship questions. You see? And so when we don't do that, then it just becomes a business transaction. The relationship becomes very transactional. And so I say, Start with building the relationships, because that's what starts to build trust. When we just start out with the business, with the policies, with the rules, then the relationship doesn't develop. And that lends itself to then a more of a combative type of relationship between home and school. And you all are doing very special work, because you're the ones who really launched this partnership with families, because you're starting early in the life of the child. So if you all begin this process of saying, this relationship is a good one, this relationship between educators and parents is important, we want to start off on the right foot, we're passionate about this, we need to hear from you, you are our partner. And families hear that. They say, wow, a lot of our families here say, I've never had educators talk to me that way. Usually it's just all the business, or they only talk to me when my child has done something bad.
Yeah, true.
If that's the first time you're talking to a parent, it's over something negative, the relationship will never develop. So that's what I mean. You have to be intentional about spending time creating that positive relationship between families and educators. And that gets you off on the right foot right from the beginning.
I think that's a very important message. So folks sitting in the managerial positions, leadership positions in early childhood sector, those who take key decisions, and the teachers working on ground, this particular message is for all, that you need to start it with the intention to build it. And that's when it grows and grows. A very important message coming from you, Dr. Mapp. I'm sure we are running out of time, but I'm getting greedy here. So let me take one more question before we say goodbye to you and wrap up the summit. I would say this is something that we often see in early childhood sector, Dr. Mapp, that there are parents who are really, really involved, who really take those efforts. They walk that extra mile to get involved in the activities in classrooms or child engagement. But then there are parents whom we see only at PTMs, and they rarely come with the clock that, hey, I have to rush for my next meeting, so I have exact 10 minutes to talk. And this is reality. This is the reality of early childhood sector. How do we make sure that children are not suffering because of that? Because we see a pattern here when we work. I myself work as a child psychologist with thousands of families at Klay, and I see this pattern that teachers end up serving more to these children unknowingly, not any intentional bias, but they end up serving more to those children whose parents are more involved, totally unknowingly. And as sometimes they do not involve children, or they sometimes notice certain changes in children a little late because they are clueless about family environment. How do you bridge this gap, Dr.
Well, what I have found is that somehow or another, families of all different walks of life have gotten the message from educators that they don't need to be engaged, that they should stay out of the business of school. And we have to undo that message. They think, okay, my job is only to drop my child off and that you take care of the rest. I'm busy, or on the other side of it, I'm intimidated, I don't want to get involved. So what we find is that right from the beginning, if the message comes from school, you are important to the success of your child's education, and we want to partner with you. So one of the things that many of our schools do here now is this, right from in early childhood, the parent, for that first meeting or that first phone call home, the educator says, you are important to this process of education. I need you to partner with me in order for this to work. You should expect, I'm expecting that we're going to communicate regularly, because without you, this is not going to work. A lot of families have not heard that message. They've heard, you don't need to be engaged. So we call them welcoming phone calls. So our teachers sit down, they get the roster of parents, they start to call sometimes a month before school starts. And they say, hello, my name is, and I want to tell you that I may be the expert on the curriculum, but you are the expert on your child. And so I need your expertise. I need to talk to you regularly in order for me to be the best educator I can be, because your knowledge about your child is going to be key to my success as a teacher. Can we stay in regular communication? What's the best time for me to be able to reach you? You have my number. Please feel free to call me. Here are the times that I've set up for parent phone calls. You see, you start to let the parent know, my expectation is that we are going to be in regular communication and that you are important to the enterprise of schooling. What happens sometimes is that when parents hear that message from us, they sit up and say, oh my, this is a different relationship. And they start to enjoy it because it's a relationship of partnership. But when we don't tell our families from the beginning that that's really the expectation, then they take on sometimes a mindset that, you take care of it. This is your job by yourself. So what it is, what we do is we transmit to them that this only will work when we're in partnership with each other.
Wonderful. Wonderful. It's something that I think every parent should hear, every educator and every policymaker should hear, that the intention is the key here, and setting up clear-cut expectations for this bond to grow with every passing day. For sure, we will end up achieving what we dream for our children in early childhood sector. Thank you so very much, Dr. Mapp. I know I have exceeded a couple of minutes of your commitment, but it was so wonderful to hear you, and I'm sure it is something that people will research more, will want to know more, and in fact, they will have now those systematic and scientific lens to build the most crucial aspect of teacher empowerment, respect, and recognition is that both the entities need to come together to support each other, which will ultimately lead to the benefit of the child. Many thanks again and again in my own way. I really would request you to take a bow and huge respect to the great work that you are doing. Stay in touch with us.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks a ton, Dr. Mapp. And oh, my friends, we have been learning since very morning. This summit saw some great personalities in the morning to join us for the workshops. We talked about different aspects of really knowing your own powers, unleashing your own personal powers, and then moving on to hone your skills so that educators feel more empowered. And my friends, if I have to summarize everything, I would say ISEY is actually a labor of love and respect for the teaching fraternity. There are many people who put up this together for you as a gift on Teachers' Day. And we have gone through many challenges, many tough times, hours of hard work. So the people sitting behind the screen, if I start taking their names, we will need another hour. So I won't do that. But I'm talking about you. Thanks, a big thanks to the organization like Klay, which never fails to host a summit of this stature, breaking all the boundaries, reaching to different countries, and bringing the right kind of discussions around the pertinent topics. But trust me, a company is all about the people it has. And Klay is blessed to have some great personalities, some devoted teachers, some passionate thinkers who really want to make a difference in the field of early childhood education, right? Starting from the CEO himself till the every single person you see working on ground. So thanks a ton to all the people who have been working for this edition of Summit for days and nights, hours and hours, weeks and months, and made it so successful. This year, the focus was to bring a very rich quality content on a platter as a gift to you, and I hope we succeed a little bit in that. My friends, as I said in the beginning, ISEY is reaching another milestone. Next year, we are going to celebrate the 5th edition, and with a lot of energy, a lot more positivity, we will bring that to you. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for joining us from different places of the world. You attending this summit gives more responsibility on our shoulder. We will do justice next year as well with your expectations. With that very hope and a humble way to say thanks to all the teachers across globe for the great work that you are doing, we present this video to you. Stay tuned for ISEY 2023.